Chapter 1342 Hui. Chapter 1342 Hui, a mythical venomous snake, also a kind of dragon according to legends in the Han Dynasty. The strange transformation in his body had troubled Shi Yan at first. He found it hard to accept, and he even denied it instinctively. However, he quickly accepted this bizarre transformation. He even felt a little happy. He could feel that his overall competence was enhanced tremendously after that transformation. Every cell in his body was now filled with exploding power. His body could burst off in any minute. It was a feeling of having brimming energy. His acupuncture points continued to erupt that mysterious energy while his skeleton, veins, and tendons were absorbing it greedily. His fingernails became like sabers, and now he had a pair of bone wings on his back that made him fearsome. He looked like a warrior of heavenly monster tribe who had a humanoid body and a pair of dragon wings. The co-soul sinking in the incipient extent released some vague wisps of memories. It was like when a seal on the soul was lifted. Sure, Yen suddenly had received a lot of knowledge. It was likely the memories of Grace, mainland in the co-soul. When he had fused with the origin, it had become part of his co-soul, but it was rusty ever since. It opened at a critical moment, and now it was the critical moment, so the sealed memory was released. Shi Yan suddenly shouted and turned into a shooting light aiming at the giant worm. An extremely sharp aura shot out from his body and turned him into a cold sword that thrusted at the worm. This is its brain. It's called Hui. The other 11 worms are parts of its body. This one is the head, which has the weakest attacking ability. It's the source of the worm's intelligence. Once its body comes, no one can control it. While he was screaming, Shi Yan turned into a stream of brilliant stars that stabbed toward Hui the giant worm. Ming, Hao, and Xian, who were bewildered. "Lift the seal!" shouted Shi Yan. Then the scorching flames expanded from that shooting light. Countless clusters of flames increased fast. It was the magical ability of the combined heaven flames. Ming Hao hesitated for a while, then opened a corner of his barrier. The wisps of souls scattered. Xian, He, and Lei Di released the soul consciousness to check, and they were astounded to find the tremendous energy fluctuating on Shi Yan's body. And when he spoke the name of the worm, they were moved. Just like what Ming Hao had done, they lifted a corner of their seal so as Shi Yan could get in. De Carlos and Frederick did the same. They made way for him, letting him pierce through the barriers to land on that giant worm. In their minds, Shi Yan looked a bit eccentric now. It was not only because of his appearance. It was also the fact that he knew that the name of the worm was Hui. They felt strange and somehow magical. They also knew that Shi Yan had the inheritance from Bloodthirsty and had fused with Grace, mainland's origin. He was the most magical person in this world. It was going to be hard to assess him with typical knowledge. Thus, they allowed Shi Yan to be bold. They wanted to see what kind of wave and wind he could rise this time. In front of many people, Shi Yan pierced through the barrier to reach Hui. The sharp fingernails of his hand sparkled coldly and smoothly stabbed into the worm's body. It was strange that the layer of bright yellow keratin that the super erosive energy couldn't melt was like torn fabric when Shi Yan thrust his long fingernails in it. A tear was made where a thick, yellow liquid was oozing out. De Carlos and Ming Hao were shocked. Each of them had tried every method they could to tear the body of the giant worm. They knew that it was very tough to break the defense of the worm. The bright yellow keratin armor could be compared to Bloodthirsty's body, which was almost unbreakable. They felt that their hands were tied as they had no other solution. Surprisingly, Shi Yan's long fingernails that suddenly grew was able to cut a large hole on the worm's body. They thought it was so strange and inexplicable. Swish! Shi Yan looked like he was possessed by some mighty god. His wings flapped behind his back while his cold, sparkling fingernails continuously tore the worm. He had cut So many wounds on the massive worm. Hui shrieked in rage. Its giant body wildly convulsed and splashed the yellow substance. Countless clusters of heaven flames congregated on Shi Yan's body. It looked like he was sinking in a sea of fire. The heaven flame burned down all the splashes of yellow substance and protected Shi Yan. At the same time, Wetterson's earth-corrosive energy came. His erosive energy could melt a little bit of the worm's armor. However, after Shi Yan had cut its body many times, the erosive energy could get into its flesh and wound its core. Confine it. Don't let it escape. Ming how suddenly reacted. He understood Shi Yan's plan. He shouted immediately. Hui had its faces redden as if Hui had just taken ecstasy. They released the power of the immortal realm experts, ultimately. For the time being, the world seemed discolored with the void shaking, the mad dragons flying and the blood sea boiling. Hui was an absolute beginning creature, a creature that was born in the earliest era of the world. It had endless abilities with eternal life. If they classified creatures, Hui would be the existence at the top of the food pyramid. It also had the highest living form. If they could kill such an existence to discover its secrets, they could directly break the principle that had created this world. Also, they could know what had happened in the absolute beginning era. Space, time, cosmos, power Upanishads, and energies had existed since a very early point in time. However, as they had developed, they had lost their original shapes. Some had even changed completely. What they looked like before, how the universe was formed, what the acme of the Great Path was, what they would become when they reached the ultimate level of their cultivation. Perhaps they could find all the answers from Hui. As they had a chance to kill Hui now, they were so excited. The blood in their body was boiling to urge their energy to the utmost. Spark, the elder of the God clan, was kept inside a meatball, which was also on the surface of the worm. At this moment, Spark's corpse suddenly moved. Spark, closed eyes, opened quietly and revealed a pair of lively eyes. His eyes rolled. Slowly he gained color. The God Lord shadow emerged in his pupils, as if he was using Spark's eyes to observe the situation. Not many people knew that the one with the origin of the ancient continent could have many supernatural abilities. Haig was the one with the highest compatibility with the heaven flames among Shi Yan, Audrey, and Song Yin. He could easily gather the energy of ancient God continent to increase his power. After the God Lord had occupied Haig's body, the fusing progress with the flaming origin had finally reached the best condition. The God clan was born in ancient God continent. As the God Lord got the origin of the continent, he had become its master. It seemed like ancient God continent had become his incipient extent. After he had utterly fused with the heaven flames, he could control any member of the God clan with just one thought. As long as they got the God blood, no matter where they were, the God Lord could locate them and even possess them to get to that location precisely. It was the magical power that only someone fully fused with the flaming origin could have. Shi Yan, Audrey, and Song Yin still needed to work a lot to reach such a level. Also, even if they could reach that level without the cultivation base like the God Lord, they couldn't do that. Now the God Lord was standing on the God zenith of ancient God continent, but he was able to use the God blood that never disappeared in Spark's body to observe everything in this area. Whether it was Shi Yan, Ming Hao, or De Carlos, they couldn't imagine that the God Lord was using a chunk of meat on Huey's body to observe the situation here. They didn't know that the God Lord could use Spark's body to come here in just a blink of an eye. Dash. Tsunami star. Tianxia's eyes were cold and dark. He was sitting cross-legged above the pond. An unknown energy twirled around him. His face twisted as if he had to endure some terrible pain. The green veins bulged on his forehead and made his handsome face fearsome. A worm mark emerged on his glabella. It looked like a real worm living between his two eyebrows. It was moving, though. The wisps of memories and thoughts came out of the seal, pouring into his brain. Tianxia was receiving something quietly. A long time afterward he resumed. The worm mark on his forehead faded. He had concealed it. He recovered his normal condition. His face kept the usual smile. After a flash, he reappeared in the secret chamber where Ling Xiang, Caesar, and Lorraine were gathering. He said casually, "I'm cultivating a special technique. Sometimes I will fall into hallucination. I need to quiet down to adjust a little. I'm sorry I made you wait." Inside the secret chamber, Ling Xiang, Caesar, and Lorraine didn't know what was happening out there. They didn't know the earth-shaking commotion in the 11-star areas. They were polite when they told him, "It's all right." Of course, they didn't know that while they were waiting for Tianxia underwent some marvelous changes. They didn't know that Tianxia had secretly ordered his subordinates to destroy the sea territories in the 11-star areas. He had directly guided the giant worms to create a catastrophe there. "I have a presumptuous request," said Tianxia seriously. Ling Xiang and the others wore stern faces and focused on him to see what he wanted to do. "I want all of you to help me," Tianxia chuckled. A strange, evil light swirled in his eyes. "What do you want?" Ling Xiang was surprised. "I want to eat you," said Tianxia. While Ling Xiang, Caesar, and Lorraine were dumbstruck, billions of 7-colored lights shot out from Tianxia's body like rainbows. They were actually bright, colored ropes, and they tied down the other 3. Tianxia swayed, and a cold, sinister wisp of soul consciousness moved through the ropes to enter the other 3's brains. They were shaken hard as they were filled with horror. However, before they could scream, the rainbow ropes had squeezed them and pulled them toward him. Crack! Crack! Shortly after, the sounds of chewing bones that could raise the hair on people's bodies arose in that secret chamber. The leaders of the 1,000 Fantasy sect, the Broken Hall, and the Heaven River Temple had come to the end of their lives before they could even screech. Chapter 1343, God Lord. Chapter 1343, God Lord. Huey's massive body had countless cuts where pungent, sticky yellow fluid was oozing. Wetterson's body ballooned strangely, as if he was about to explode. People could even see the fine, gruesome cracks on his belly. A brutal, murderous aura, as if someone wanted to destroy the whole world, emitted from his stomach. That murderous aura urged his life energy and consumed his soul to trigger all of his energy. Everybody could see that Wetterson's explosion would result in him paying with his life. No one really cared about his life. Ming, Hao, and Xian he were waiting until Huey's massive body eroded and its defense was eliminated. That time would be the best chance for them to seize the spoils. The body of the giant worm was decaying from the inside. The thick smoke was like ink that emitted more furiously. Shi Yan's acupuncture points sucked them all and increased the power of his body and soul. Suddenly, Shi Yan suddenly stopped destroying Huey's body. He halted and stood on its body. The magical feeling when the soul sublimated flooded his mind. His acupuncture points, tendons, and god power ancient tree had become whole with a subtle connection. The branches of the ancient tree connected with his veins, and his veins connected to the acupuncture points. The energy gushing out of the acupuncture points flowed through the veins and poured into his lower abdomen. God Power Ancient Tree was bright and crystal clear grew again. A warm current washed his brain and entered his sea of consciousness. The comfortable feeling that nothing could compare to filled his soul altar. The dregs and contaminations in his soul altar were washed away by the clear, warm current. His soul altar was clean now. In that short moment, his soul altar had become a beautiful chunk of flawless jade. It was transparent and sparkling. It hid the endless, marvelous abilities. He suddenly understood that his cognition of space, star, and death and life power Upanishads had become much more profound. It was like a young, naive teenager who opened his mind and became witty smart. While his thought changed, the warm currents had washed his soul altar. The energies of his power Upanishads shot fast and moved around. Waves of marvelous, inexplicable understanding reflected in his mind and became more profound. Sure, Yin felt like he was flying free in the fountainhead of power Upanishads to learn the most magical powers. It was the sublimation of the soul altar and the next development of the realm. Unexpectedly, he had advanced directly from second sky to third sky of incipient God realm. It was an incredible breakthrough. He stood there in a daze, feeling the subtle changes of his body, soul altar, and soul. His eyes suddenly had magical light. He gathered himself together to observe the massive worm underneath. His face changed abruptly. At the direction he was watching, he saw a pair of eyes that shouldn't open at this moment. That pair of eyes belonged to Spark. Spark was dead. He had checked carefully and found that Spark's life magnetic field had vanished and left nothing. He was dead. How could he open his eyes now? It was so strange. His first thought was that Hui had borrowed Spark's body to wiggle the last time. However, looking in those eyes for seconds, he objected that possibility. It was because the emotion in Spark's eyes didn't match Huey's style of no emotion at all. The look from those eyes was profound and archaic, with gleams of teasing and cold looks, as if it was a hunter waiting for its prey to enter the trap. Shi Yan felt insecure. More strangely, that pair of eyes were looking at him in the eyes without fear or attempts to avoid eye contact. Apparently, that person wasn't afraid of his discovery. Oh no, something is wrong. He had a bad premonition. Those eyes were familiar. He tried to force his brain to think. Shortly after, the co-soul emerged from the incipient extent and entered the soul altar. When he looked at those eyes again, he was shocked. He couldn't help but hiss, Haig. The 4 ancient continents, Grace, Mainland, God Bless Mainland, Ancient God Continent, and Ancient Demon Continent, had a subtle connection. As Shi Yan had fused with Grace Mainland, he could feel the special aura that only Haig had. It was a special aura that only the ancient continents had, and the ones of his kind could capture that faint aura. It was the soul streak after fusing with the origin that they couldn't conceal. After his shouting, the eyes were surprised and looked at him. The shades of emotion in those eyes changed continuously. A strong, insecure feeling arose in his heart. He didn't wait to see the eyes changing and turning into a bunch of starlights. He used his space power Upanishad to pierce through layers of barriers, leaving Huey's body. Swish! He steadied his body by Holy Beast, Azure Dragon. With a heavy countenance, he cried, Spark is inside that worm. His eyes open. They belong to Haig. I can feel the distinct aura from him. Haig! Ming Hao shook his head. Maybe you're wrong. Haig doesn't exist anymore. He's dead. Dead. Shi Yan was surprised. He couldn't believe it. Impossible. That person has the aura of ancient God continent's origin. I'm fused with Grace, Mainland's origin. How can I be wrong about this? Ming Hao was surprised at first. He was shocked, his face extremely somber. You said he has the aura of ancient God continent's origin. Exactly. Ming Hao, Xian He, Azure Dragon, and De Carlos became dark and grimaced. They looked at Huey's body as if they were facing the biggest enemy. Brian, you're here. Why are you hiding your head but showing your tail? Ming Hao shouted ear-piercingly. When they heard the name Brian, Lady and Frederick discolored in fear as if they saw ghosts in daylight. The excitement they had subsided as if someone had poured a bucket of cold water on them. Their joy was extinguished. Why is he here? Frederick's pale face became paler. It wasn't that he was afraid. It was the sign of ultimately compressing his energy. He used his best power. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Lightning strikes as big as a giant python shot out from Azure Dragon's body, creating a sea of thunder and lightning. The deadly lightning energy was enough to destroy the world, stirring the chaotic space current and splashing the strange but marvelous light. When they dealt with Hui, they didn't look as solemn as they did right now. They all looked in the direction Shi Yan had pointed. Ming Hao looked at Wetterson, his face dark. I understand why Wetterson's energy suddenly rocketed. It turns out that you've given him fire. It seems like you've used all the pieces of our master's remains that your god clan has gathered in the past thousands of years, right? Crack! A meat lump at the surface of Huey's body exploded. The yellow fluid splashed. Holy light rolled out torrentially and slowly condensed into Haig. Swish! He emerged from the open slit on Spark's body. He looked at Ming Hao's group and spoke coldly and indifferently. After Bloodthirsty fell, you guys have changed a lot. You don't have the spirit from that year. I've been watching you for a long time. I didn't expect that you guys wouldn't have the guts to attack the absolute beginning creature directly. No wonder why you guys have advanced only one more level after 10,000 years. If I didn't get severely hurt and my body wasn't destroyed, I think I would have broken this world and escaped by today, just like how Bloodthirsty had traveled freely in the sea domain of nihility. While he was talking, his body was like a precious crystal that reflected billions of dazzling light beams. Those lights were layering upon each other like sharp swords stabbing every corner of the space. Each of the beams had life energy as if they were clones of his soul. Puff, puff, puff. The beams of light shot everywhere. Hui was next to him, so it received most of the attack. His light stabbed through the yellow keratin. The defense that even the corrosion power Upanishad couldn't melt was pierced through easily. He was the second person who could break Huey's body defense. Different from Shi Yan, Brian didn't use any weapon. He was just using the light swords created by his god power to hurt the absolute beginning creature. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The blinding lights were shot with essence of his power, Upanishad. Xian, he, Ming Hao, and the others had to focus on dealing with this light attack. They darkened their faces and built barriers to defend themselves. Shi Yan wasn't an exception. He seemed to see the posture of the first-generation precursor of the God clan. When he was on Desolate, he had fused with the star incipient extent of that God precursor. He got a deep attainment of that precursor of the realm. Today, the God Lord released his power Upanishad. Shi Yan pulled himself together to observe and comprehend. He found that the God Lord's attainment of light power Upanishad had surpassed the precursor of 100,000 years ago. He was truly the strongest existence of the God clan ever. Sea of vanishing stars. Shi Yan was anxious. He urged his God power and felt happy. The circulating speed of his God power was several times faster than in the past. It wasn't that he had broken through the next realm, but it was that his tendons, veins, blood, and even his cells had transformed to a deep level. It was his life transformation. Within a thought, a sea of stars emerged in front of him. It looked dreamy like the moon reflecting on the water. However, it changed continuously from clear to vague from time to time. The God Lord's light attacks came and were lost in the sea of stars that Shi Yan had created. They were never going to escape that maze to attack Shi Yan's real body. It was the supernatural ability that Shi Yan got after fusing his star and space power Upanishads. It was the transformation of the realm when he got a flash of recognition. Oh! The God Lord let out a low cry, his deep eyes gazing at Shi Yan. He changed his visage and laughed with ease and a natural poise. All right, I will take your soul first and fuse with Grace Mainland's origin then. His body swayed and crossed spaces to land on the sea of stars that Shi Yan had projected. At the same time, a beam of blood shot out from Wetterson's body. That beam of blood was like a key that revolved in the void. That blood changed again and turned into a window. Silhouettes got through the window. Carefree, light, easygoing, and divine martial, the four great heavenly kings arrived, followed by Feng Ju, buyers, the elders of the God clan, and the heads of the 12 families. They hovered by Wetterson. Magically, the erosive energy that Wetterson was releasing didn't affect them. It was because the blinding beams of light had affected Wetterson's deadly field and weakened the erosive power. Those beams of light came from the God Lord. He had shot those light to frighten Ming, Hao, and Xianhe, but most of all they were to protect Carefree and the others. Chapter 1344, Soul Congregating. Chapter 1344, Soul Congregating. Anusur. The God Lord suddenly came across the sky and used his supernatural power to bring a crowd of God experts to this area. For the time being, so many God experts gathered around the giant Worm Hui. Most of them were at incipient God realm. They were the peerless warriors, including members of the Elder Committee and the chiefs of the 12 families. To fight Hui, the God Lord had mobilized all the warriors of his elite force. Ming, Hao, and Xian were stern. Apparently, they were afraid of the God Lord. As soon as they saw him appear, they became cautious and urged their power Upanishad to the utmost. They were prepared for a bloody battle. Everyone expected that the battle between the bloodthirsty force and the God clan would happen in ancient God continent, ancient demon continent, Grace mainland, or any other star area. However, it took place right at the chaotic space current. Because of Hui, the battle that shouldn't happen was forced to take place before an ideal time. Actually, the God Lord still needed a lot of energy and time to recover his original power. Ming, Hao, Xianhe, and the others hadn't prepared completely. This battle should have been postponed. However, the inevitable occurred today. The God Lord was like a blinding sun. Magnificent lights radiated dazzlingly from his body. The holy light rolled torrentially with an undying soul spirit, shooting at every direction. Shi Yen had unknowingly entered third sky of incipient God realm, and his power Upanishads had sublimated. His star and space power Upanishads had preliminarily fused. Now, it showed a marvel that nothing could compare to. The sea of stars in front of him was both real and dreamy. It changed continuously, like the reflection of the moon on the water. The bunch of light beams that the God Lord had shot was covered by the fantasy incipient extent, but they couldn't harm Shi Yan's real body. He smiled faintly and gave a surprise scream. Then he considered Shi Yan his primary target, stepping on the void to approach him. Shi Yan cursed him inwardly. His soul now received terrifying pressure. When the God Lord was about to reach him, he felt so heavy as if his soul altar was about to smash. He was frightened as he got to know the God Lord's intimidation. He had just reached third sky of incipient God realm, but he believed that if he fought Spark at the false immortal realm, he would defeat him easily. Shi Yan could even manage to fight first sky of immortal realm experts like Caesar, Lorraine, or Ling Xiang once. However, he couldn't face the God Lord. The one who was severely hurt had to use Haig's body to resurrect and hadn't recovered half of his power yet. Shi Yan felt anxious and restless, as if he was facing a wild beast from the immemorial time. His soul was intimidated. As you also got the ancient continent's origin, you should get its magical features. It's called Hui, a creature from the absolute beginning era, like Desolate. They are from a very ancient time. This archaic living being has many marvelous things. However, I can't understand it completely. Perhaps it will be easier if I get your origin. The God Lord was talking casually. When he spoke to Shi Yan, his face looked magically tender. However, he had entered the sea of vanishing stars that Shi Yan had built in just a blink of an eye. The sea of vanishing star was the ability of space and star power Upanishads. It had connected directly to his incipient extent. While his soul consciousness changed, the sea of stars seemed to vanish. It's an interesting ability of your power Upanishads, smiled the God Lord. A chunk of bright light emitted from his palm. Marvelously, that light had many magical power Upanishads. The auras of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, ice, lightning, and electric, and wind emerged at once inside the chunk of light in his hand. Boom! Boom! The sea of stars that Shi Yan had created melted like snow under that light. Shi Yan was exposed. You shouldn't fuse with the origin. It's your luck, but also your calamity. Maybe I will give you room to grow to give bloodthirsty face. However, when you got the power bloodthirsty controlled, you became a person I had to kill. It's too bad. The god lord looked regretful. He sighed, raising one hand and attempting to capture Shi Yan. Puff! Shi Yan looked cold, his eyes crimson. He spurted blood. That blood was a scorching flame, burning fierily. His energy rocketed and urged his spirit, chi and soul. Boom! His brain was shaken as if his life energy was completely triggered. His cells, hair, flesh, and bones seemed to have life. The explosions echoed abruptly inside his body. His body cracked, and a fierce desire of killing arose in his head. The thick, murderous aura swam over. Under Death Power Upanishad, it turned into a massive, bloody hand as big as an imposing mountain. That giant hand was as red as if it was made of blood. It reached for the God Lord. As it was about to touch the God Lord, vigorous life energy was sent out of the fingertips of the giant hand. That vitality didn't weaken the deadly hand. It had enhanced the hand's intimidation. The energy fluctuating from the bloody hand was enough to break a life star. Thud! The massive hand slapped the God Lord like a stone ball hitting a big mountain. The God Lord stood imposingly. However, he looked surprised. Eyeing Shi Yan for a while, he said, "It seems that Xian he has given you all the essence of his power Upanishad. Although the power of your Death Upanishad isn't as excellent as Xian he's, it isn't bad." He was skeptical. Shi Yan's performance today didn't match the intelligence that the Elder Committee had told him. They said that Shi Yan was at first sky of incipient God realm. They said that he had mastered space, star, and death and life power Upanishad. However, his power Upanishads hadn't fused with each other yet. They told him that he was still in the stage of understanding his power, so he was still far away from the fusing stage. However, at this moment, Shi Yan was obviously at third sky of incipient God realm, and his fusion of space and star power Upanishads wasn't bad. He had also fused death and life power Upanishad smoothly. The conflicting information confused the God Lord. He didn't know that all of these were the merit of the mysterious energy from Hui. That energy was magical. It did not only help Shi Yan reach third sky of incipient God realm, but it also increased the fusion speed of his power Upanishad. Shi Yan could blend the special abilities of his power Upanishads to strike with much more strong attacks. All of these achievements were generated recently. Thus, the God Lord's hand was interrupted midway. He couldn't grab Shi Yan to destroy him directly. He had missed the best chance. Because right when he wanted to attack one more time, in the middle of the turbulent space current, countless beautiful, heavenly doors emerged. Then, countless Ming Hao walked out of those doors. Like shadows, they came and merged with Ming Hao's host body. The soul control power Upanishad had divided the soul into millions of wisps. After each wisp was detached, the user's power was reduced by a little bit. The more clones he created, the weaker they individually were. It was the principle of the world that no one could change. Of course, Ming Hao couldn't do that either. However, as Brian the God Lord had come, Ming Hao knew that it was going to be very serious. He decided to gather all the clones of his soul that were scattered in many star areas, all fused into one. Right when the God Lord wanted to attack one more time, Ming Hao moved to Shi Yan instantly like a wisp of a soul. His eyes were cold and dark as he said, "Brian, I'm your opponent. Actually, I don't want to battle you now. But as you can't wait, I have to fight you." As Ming Hao was talking, more and more silhouettes came and merged with him. There were more than several hundreds of them. His aura became more intimidating and his realm was changing. Ming Hao, I can't believe that you... De Carlos cried, his face astounded as if it was the first time he knew Ming Hao. Aside from him, Xian He, Frederick, Azure Dragon, and Lei Di were also baffled. They were in disbelief. After the God Lord had come here, he always looked calm and relaxed. Now he changed his face when he looked at Ming Hao having many clones merging continuously. Ming Hao's body was dark like a sinister ghost. He gave people a magical feeling of something real and false at the same time. It was inexplicable indeed. He was hovering there, but people had a feeling that he didn't exist. You are worthy of your reputation as the leader of the Cortege of 8. After 10,000 years, Xian He and Frederick have made only one step further, but you progressed 2 steps. You've reached 3rd sky of a mortal realm. No wonder you dare to declare war against our clan. It turns out that you have the same realm as mine. The God Lord lowered his voice. Originally, I didn't want to take action so early. However, you couldn't wait. Brian, I've planned each step to start a war against your clan to give you time to recover. I wanted to fight against you when you got your 3rd sky of a mortal realm cultivation base back. You're too fast, Ming Hao sighed. Before his soul congregated, it was like he was encountering the strongest enemy. He had to be very cautious. However, when countless clones of his soul returned, his power had reached 3rd sky of a mortal realm. He now could relax and show his arrogant and proud bearings without fear. 3rd sky of a mortal realm was the ultimate realm of power Upanishad in the vast universe. It was the real ultimate existence. In the crowd of billions of people, the warriors at this realm could be counted with just the fingers of one hand. Currently, there were 2 warriors at such a realm, the God Lord and Ming Hao. However, the God Lord hadn't recovered yet. Compared to Ming Hao, who had accumulated for 10,000 years apparently, the God Lord was in a disadvantageous situation. This point could be seen from Lei Di's and Azure Dragon's cheered-up faces, as well as the fear on the faces of the God Clan experts. Everybody turned to the God Lord to see how he would deal with this. Strangely, the God Lord looked a little surprised. Then he pulled himself together and laughed. Ming Hao, you're wrong. My current power is equal to yours. If I recover fully, you don't have even a small chance of winning against me. After 10,000 years, although my body was destroyed, my soul hasn't stayed still. After 10,000 years, you've entered 3rd sky of a mortal realm. But do you know what I am at? Listening to him, the members of the God clan cheered up and their eyes brightened. Ming Hao contemplated for a while and then nodded. He didn't protest or look suspicious. Perhaps you're right. 11 clones of Hui will come soon. We should have a winner before that, the God Lord frowned. We shouldn't waste more time. That's what I think, said Ming Hao. Chapter 1345, New Power. Chapter 1345, New Power, _. The God Lord said they shouldn't waste time, and he actually did that. Almost instantly, a halo that was even brighter than the sun radiated from his body. That light was like the mixed energy of many power Upanishads, including metal, wood, water, fire, earth, lightning and electric, wind and ice. They were chained by the light power Upanishad, making the God Lord a massive chunk of light. His body became as dazzling as a diamond under the intense light. The flow of strong light with the God Lord's soul consciousness shot towards Ming Hao like a shower of swords. Ming Hao's eyes were bluish-green. While his power was changing, his ghostly body, which the souls had already merged and twisted, caused the space around him to fiercely collapse as if he was breaking it. The wisps of soul flew out of his body, creating the form of a soul altar. However, it was shadowy and vague. A terrifying magnetic field that could shake souls came from the soul altar that Ming Hao had just condensed. The host souls of people around him shivered as if some force had absorbed them and made them quivering and edgy. Shi Yan wasn't an exception. He could feel his host soul and co-soul get attracted by Ming Hao's soul altar. They seemed to want to leave him and sink into Ming Hao's soul altar. That feeling was so horrible. It was like his soul wasn't his anymore. Someone had robbed his soul and enslaved it. It was Ming Hao's soul control power Upanishad. Once he released his power, all the souls were going to be affected. Everybody knew that they weren't Ming Hao's target. They were just affected by the shock waves. Even so, they couldn't endure it. Their faces were filled with fear as they tried to move to the opposite direction. The members of the God clan became more irritated. They changed their faces, slightly moving far away from him. Except for the 4 heavenly kings. The 4 heavenly kings had reached second sky of a mortal realm. Of course, their realms were profound and their power was exquisite. Their souls wouldn't be affected. However, the chiefs of the 12 families and the elders of the Elder Committee looked grimaced. They hurried to move away. The dazzling lights that the God clan released shot towards Ming Hao's soul altar, but they melted down and vanished. After 10,000 years, at least the Cortege of 8 has someone like you, Ming Hao. You're qualified to fight against me once. Brian, the God Lord, looked happy. He chuckled. After a flash, he came to the void above Hui and said, "We should move further away to fight. Then we won't affect your people and my people." Although his wounds hadn't recovered fully, at his third sky of a mortal realm, everybody was going to suffer if he used his abilities. That immense, holy light carried the marvelous of many power Upanishads. Even Xian, he and Frederick acted like they were facing top enemies. They had to focus on dealing with the bunch of light that Brian had struck. Lei Di, Azure Dragon, and De Carlos had to spare their energy to resist pressure from the God Lord. Although it wasn't so much that they couldn't endure it, it was so annoying that they couldn't ease their minds. Just like that, the soul control power Upanishad that Ming Hao had released also affected everybody's soul. The warriors of the 12 families and the elders felt so irritated. Thus, the battle between the other 2 had held them back as they had to defend the shock waves from their attacks. "It's good then." Ming Hao turned into a dim light, dragging his soul altar and disappearing in the direction the God Lord had just gone. The 2 of them were hovering above Hui, but when the others lifted their heads to look, they had a strange feeling that they were looking through layers of light curtains to see the reflection on the lake. They all felt as if they were watching something unreal. It seemed like the God Lord and Ming Hao weren't in the same world with them, but in a magical world that they had created within their territory. The God Lord was in a world of dazzling light with moving stars, icy mist, a sea of fire, the great earth with forests. All things a normal world should have. Ming Hao's world was dark and deep with some shadowy clusters like ghosts and layers of reflecting spaces. It looked like he had countless pieces of different worlds mending together in his own world. His figure disappeared and moved through the shattered worlds so that people could never catch him. After their realm reached a specific level, warriors had supernatural power like the mighty creator. They could create a world from nothing. A world that suited their power Upanishads could promote their supernatural power to the utmost. It was actually a performance of the divine domain at the highest level. For example, warriors cultivating ice power Upanishad could use the cold energy to create a world of snow where he could use the cold energy to the deepest level. Right now, the 2 extraordinary experts, the God Lord and Ming Hao, were creating worlds most suitable to their power Upanishads. Their worlds were some kind of modification to the real world, and they weren't just to fight. When they were fighting, the others wore somber faces as they forgot everything else just to concentrate on the 2 of them. Their audience consisted of peerless warriors in this vast cosmos. In their fields of expertise, they were much more outstanding than others. The lowest realm that a warrior in this group had was second sky of incipient god realm, and many of them were at the false immortal realm or immortal realm. The battle between the God Lord and Ming Hao was a top battle that they could only watch once in their lives. Through the death match between the experts, they could widen their knowledge and grasp their new understanding of power Upanishads, which would help them break through again. Thus, they even stopped caring about Hui at this moment. Only one warrior didn't pay too much attention to the battle between the God Lord and Ming Hao. It was Shi Yan. At this moment, Shi Yan was still immersed in the most marvelous state he had ever been. He didn't want to get out of it. The mysterious energy from Hui was moving inside his body and seeping into his god power ancient tree, skeleton, tendons, blood, cells, and even his hair. Gradually, he found a really magnificent phenomenon. His body became transparent. His soul, altar, and body were refined, and they had boosted to third sky of incipient god realm. His understanding of power Upanishads was greatly enhanced, which was even changing his soul altar structure at the moment. His sea of consciousness had become endless. His soul consciousness, under that energy's effect, seemed to become a brand new energy. His sea of consciousness, just like what happened to his god power ancient tree, had become another fountainhead of energy. This kind of transformation in his soul consciousness had brimmed his energy, which made him shiver in thrill. Slowly, he understood what was happening to him. The soul consciousness was also a sort of energy. However, this energy was used to sense and check things. It couldn't become a powerful attack. For example, the god power could smash a mountain and collapse it, and the erosive power could even melt down an entire mountain. However, the soul consciousness could be like the wind that gets through cracks in a mountain to survey even the smallest corner inside the mountain. The soul consciousness couldn't break the mountain directly. It was common knowledge and also the typical principle of power. However, as a sea of consciousness and soul consciousness were transforming, Shi Yan had a marvelous feeling that his soul consciousness could even move a mountain or fill up the sea. He could feel that his current soul consciousness had eternal abilities. While his soul consciousness was changing, he suddenly had a wonderful feeling that there was a kind of incomparably enormous energy in this chaotic space basin. That kind of energy was immensely abundant here, but he couldn't see or touch it. But now he could use his soul consciousness to see it. When he got such an incredible feeling, he suddenly found that his body was also affected when his sea of consciousness changed. His body seemed to turn into nothing directly. His heart twitched. When he urged the god power ancient tree, his body resumed its normal condition and became visible. He was dumbstruck for a long time. Afterward, his eyes showed his fantastic thrill. Apparently, when his body was invisible, it was similar to the ability that the bloodthirsty remains had. Rumors said that Bloodthirsty controlled a mysterious power that only he understood in the past 10,000 years. The god lord Ling Xiang Caesar Lorraine had been laboriously seeking this power for so many years in vain. The power he had just grasped seemed to be that mysterious power. This power came from the absolute beginning creature. Previously, Hui had tried to tempt him to help it escape. The price was that it would give him its magical power. Sure, Yan didn't think that Hui knew its marvelous power. The transformation of his sea of consciousness, body, and soul altar was because his devouring power Upanishad had swallowed and converted the energy from that absolute beginning creature. His thrill didn't last long. Shortly after, Shi Yan woke up and he found that he couldn't take in more energy from Hui. At the same time, he found that Wetterson had used up his life energy. His face was ash-gray as he didn't have any beam of erosive energy in his body. He quietly sank into the chaotic space current. Like a shooting star, he sparked and then vanished in the end. Shi Yan looked at Wetterson sinking, showing regret and sighing. Wetterson's life ended like a nova. He bloomed dazzlingly before Ming Hao, and God Lord had joined hands to bury him. Ming Hao gave him bloodthirsty remains to swallow. The God Lord had used a secret technique to put the bloodthirsty remains into his stomach. He had used his life energy to burn and trigger the energy in bloodthirsty remains to wound Hui. Both Ming Hao and the God Lord knew that with his cultivation base, Wetterson couldn't endure it for a long time. However, no one cared about his death or life. To achieve their purpose and benefit from Hui, they chose to sacrifice Wetterson. Wetterson was gone now. The God Lord and Ming Hao didn't get the power from Hui. They had accidentally helped Shi Yin transform his life form and receive that mysterious power. Man proposes, God disposes. They didn't know that while they were wrestling and using their lives, Shi Yin had finished accumulating power and transforming. Chapter 1346. Hui counterattacks. Chapter 1346. Hui counterattacks. Deep inside the chaotic space basin, Brian, the God Lord, and Ming Hao were fighting fiercely in the void above Hui. However, the two of them were in layers of hallucination. The warriors in this area focused on watching them, but they couldn't see anything clearly. The God Lord and Ming Hao were like reflections in the water. The others didn't notice that Wetterson had consumed all of his energy, falling and disappearing into the darkness. Also, no one had noticed that Shi Yin was like a floating shadow that disappeared and reappeared continuously. Without Wetterson's erosive energy attack, Hui had a bright yellow keratin defense that covered its body one more time. Obviously, it wasn't in good condition. The giant worm moved and twitched as if it was hurt severely. And it was really hurt. The giant worm had emitted too much of its life energy. After the erosive energy had worn out its energy, Shi Yin had absorbed it all and turned into nutrients that boosted his life form. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Abruptly, many clusters of smokes emitted from Hui. Unpredictable, magical energy, fluctuations burst out from its body. Ordinary people couldn't recognize that energy or sense it. It seemed to be invisible. However, Shi Yin could see it clearly. The energy from Hui had triggered some sort of unknown energy that presented everywhere in this chaotic space current and created a deep vortex in the void. That vortex seemed to function as a space passage that could teleport the worm's gigantic body in just a blink of an eye. It wanted to dodge the danger. Ah! De Carlos suddenly cried, as his space power Upanishad was extremely profound. In spite of being able to sense the marvelous energy from Hui, he could still sense the uncommon commotion of space. He was frightened as he screamed, "It's not normal at all." Hearing him, the experts who were concentrating on the battle between the God Lord and Ming Hao noticed his panic. They then found that Wetterson had already disappeared and freed Hui from its confinement. The worm wanted to run away now. What should they do? Those experts had apparently considered Hui as the meat on their plate. They had been trying laboriously for a long time, and now they could achieve what they had yearned for. How could they let it seize the chance to escape? Tacitly, they exchanged looks, and all of them took action. Magnificent powers and incipient extents emerged and swarmed towards the giant body of Hui like layers of spider webs. Quickly, they had set dozens of binding layers on Hui. However, without Wetterson's erosive energy, the layers of confinement couldn't really hurt Hui. After Hui had tried its best to defend, its energy rocketed one more time, its life energy more tremendous. It was like a miracle. Shi Yin pulled himself together and observed. He had a strange but marvelous feeling. After the transformation, his soul consciousness was like his heavenly eye. He now could see the truth that ordinary people could never be able to peep. In his vision, Hui was like a powerful magnetic field. Waves of light emitted from its body and attracted strange energies in the turbulent space current. Those sorts of energy couldn't be observed with naked eyes or an ordinary soul consciousness. However, after Shi Yan's sea of consciousness had transformed, his soul consciousness had changed magically. That's how he could grasp the existence of those energies. Hui was gathering energy in the space current to enhance his power to get rid of the warrior's seals and confinements. However, Shi was frightened that perhaps no one here could stop Hui. Wetterson was the only one who could do that. However, he was gone because he had used up his life energy. He had to remind the others. However, at this moment, Zi Yao's voice suddenly arose in his head. You really want me to die? Zi Yao's graceful body appeared mildly like a small dot on Huey's back. This time, she looked very different. Her eyes had a complex compassion and affection that only sentimental people could have. She didn't look cold and heartless as she appeared previously. She looked at Shi, her face weak. Shi, I don't want to hurt you. I just want to recover so I can return to the sea domain of nihility immediately. Among the people here, you're the most special. I hope that you won't stand against me in every aspect. Shi was bewildered. He couldn't distinguish if Zi Yao was now herself or if she had completely fused with Hui. He couldn't make up his mind and frowned in a daze. He was a little panicked too. He wanted to assume that this Zi Yao wasn't herself this time either. However, he didn't know why from the shades of emotion on her face, her voice, and her little moves. Shi vaguely felt that Zi Yao currently had part of her soul and consciousness. I still remembered the first time I met you. The warriors of the underworld league imprisoned you. At that time, I already knew that you weren't ordinary. Before we could return to glorious Amethyst Star, we were trapped in Solar Star exploding fragment field. Ka Tuo was after us. We have experienced many events together. I remember all of the details. Zi Yao looked at him in the eyes and softly narrated their stories. She looked sad, though. I woke up. I know I'm now a wisp of its soul, a part of it. It has released me to understand the magical world of Desolate. I know I'm pathetic. I also know that if it doesn't exist, I will vanish altogether. Shi was stunned as he looked at Zi Yao in the distance. He listened to her talking, but he didn't say anything. He didn't say anything in the end. Without his reminder, people wouldn't be able to know what happened to Hui now. Shi could see a small dot flash under Hui. He knew he had caught a glimpse of something disappearing into Huey's body. All of a sudden, the sincere affection on Zi Yao's face faded. She resumed her indifferent, cold visage. Her line of sight switched from Shi to Xian, he and the god experts, her eyes very cold. Shi became alert. His face changed as fear flooded him. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Countless outer space streamers began to seethe terrifyingly. Many kinds of energy became furious, like collapsing mountains or an exploding planet. The clusters of red light rolled wildly and moved around in this void. Just like so many beautiful fiery eyes, they released evil energy that frightened souls. Naked eyes couldn't see this kind of energy. Only experts at the immortal realm could use their soul consciousness to catch a glimpse of it. It's that power. Carefree was shaken. He screamed in thrill. Divine Marshal, Easygoing, and Light were also frightened. They seemed to recall something very horrible, and they felt so chilled. It's the power that Master controlled, hissed Xianhe. Frederick's eyes brightened. Right. It's the power that our Master controlled. Ming Hao said that Master got that power from the absolute beginning creature. Thus, only absolute beginning creatures understand it. It seems like Ming Hao is correct again. Puff, puff, puff. Some elders of the God Clan's Elder Committee couldn't even shriek before their bodies shivered and their life magnetic field vanished. Most people didn't know what had just happened. Only Immortal Realm experts could vaguely feel something magical. Also, only one person in this area knew the reason. It was Shi. After his soul consciousness transformed, it had become as sensitive as the heavenly eye. He could see that mysterious energy expand and seep into the heads of those elders, breaking their soul altar directly and leading to the end of their host souls. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The sticky tendons like tentacles shot out from Huey's body, coiled the dead corpses, and pulled them toward it. As Hui wasn't tied by Wetterson's erosive energy, and as Shiryen was distracted and didn't remind the others, it seemed to finish some transformation. It gathered a shadow into the body, and its power increased rapidly. It could release a mysterious power under the given confining circumstance. It was the first wave of its large-scale counterattack. At the same time, people heard murmuring noises coming from pretty far away. Everybody discolored in fright. Xian, he and De Carlos were gingerly. They looked extremely stern and insecure. How could its 11 clones come here that quickly? It shouldn't be like that. Xian, he looked at De Carlos. De Carlos grimaced and said bitterly, I don't know. It seems to have increased its power instantly, which also makes the clones move faster. As they were talking in the chaotic space basin that their eyes couldn't reach, 11 worms bigger than the life stars were moving with their surging life magnetic fields like a great ocean. All were heading to their location. They moved in the space current like a big boat cruising the sea and splashing waves of space, which caused a lot of explosions. They made the space current seem to shatter everywhere they went close to. The experts always had a good premonition. They now felt the doomsday was coming. Instinctively, they felt restlessly nervous. Everybody lifted up their heads to look at the God, Lord, and Ming Hao. They wanted to know what countermeasure the two most peerless experts in this world would suggest at this critical moment. In the next moment, their faces all grimaced. It was because the void above Hui was empty now. The God, Lord, and Ming Hao seemed to have disappeared into thin air. No one knew what had happened. They exchanged looks, their faces abnormal. Even De Carlos was frowning. As people were gazing at him, he shook his head and said, Don't look at me. I don't know what's going on out there. I don't know how and why they disappeared. Pausing for a while, De Carlos said, But at their realms, when they sense the magical power here, they will return quickly. You guys don't need to be so tense and nervous. He didn't have the answer, but someone could give the answer. Hui's mysterious power has affected the worlds that the God, Lord, and Ming Hao have created. It has delivered their arenas out of this area, said Shiryen all of a sudden. Pondering, he knitted his brows. If I'm not wrong, the God, Lord, and Ming Hao are currently in the sea domain of nihility. I'm not sure if they can come back on time. Hearing him, everybody discolored in fear and screamed. Chapter 1347. The Life Magnetic Field Rockets. Chapter 1347. The Life Magnetic Field Rockets. We had only its head here, and it could trouble people. It had made many experts lose their faces. Even the God, Lord, and Ming Hao were delivered to a place they didn't know. When its 11 clones gathered, who could resist it here? At this moment, many different energies in the chaotic space current rumbled and rolled violently. Countless clusters of light, like light balls, exploded and crushed everything like giant fireballs. The gusts brought extreme coldness, swarming over and attempting to freeze people and shatter them. The burning flames, which weren't weaker than heaven flames, connected to each other and created a sea of fire that appeared everywhere. De Carlos looked extremely grave. He closed his eyes, waves of space energy rippling from him. He was using his method to count the exact time when Hui's 11 clones came. Then they could figure out a countermeasure. We have around 15 minutes. He opened his eyes, feeling so chilled. After 15 minutes, all clones of Hui will arrive. We have only 15 minutes to run away, fight against it, or find some strong reinforcements. Strong reinforcements. Azure Dragon gave a forced smile and sighed. The God, Lord, and Ming Hao have disappeared. What strong reinforcements could they find? We are no match for it. Xian, he released his soul consciousness to sense and his life power Upanishad to survey Hui's life magnetic field. His soul quivered as he felt that his hands were tied. Hui's life magnetic field was like an immense, shoreless sea of life. He believed that the combined life magnetic field of the god Lord and Ming couldn't be compared to Huey's. He knew only Bloodthirsty, the one with the same strong life magnetic field. However, when Bloodthirsty was at his peak of power, his life magnetic field wasn't as condensed or as large as Huey's. Generally, the more surging the life magnetic field was, the stronger the soul was. It also meant that its life form was exquisite and profound. The life magnetic field of the experts, of course, was more sufficient than that of weaker warriors. Just like the god power ancient tree, the life magnetic field was a criterion to assess an expert. When he was about to retrieve his soul consciousness, he was startled. His eyes were surprised when he turned to Yen, because he found another surging life magnetic field here besides Huey's. The sufficient level of that life magnetic field was even stronger than Azure Dragon, the ancestor of Heavenly Monster Tribe. That life magnetic field had reached an unimaginable level. It was almost as powerful as Bloodthirsty's that year. It was unbelievable. That life magnetic field came from Yen, a warrior at incipient god realm. Unexpectedly, it had turned a common understanding upside down. He was so astounded. Why is your life magnetic field suddenly immense and surging like that? He couldn't help but ask. Hearing him, many experts turned to look at Yen. At the moment, Yen became their focus. Right after that, Azure Dragon, Lady, Frederick, and even the 4 heavenly kings of the god clan became stunned. They were the experts at the profound, immortal god realm. Their sensibility was extraordinary. If they could catch the mysterious energy from Hui, of course, they could see the magical change in Yen's body. When they found Yen's brimming life magnetic field, they gawked in thrill. No one knew what had happened to him. Then, he was shaken as he remembered what had just happened. He screamed. We didn't recognize that the god Lord and Ming had disappeared. How could you know that? How could you know Hui perhaps has delivered them to the sea domain of nihility? How did you get all of this information? True. Are you a demon? How could you know everything? Frederick also cried. While they were talking, they had to distract their mind to avoid the earth-destroying power from Hui. The fierce explosions and the formidable attacking shock waves made the space current almost shatter. It looked like it was about to dissolve and go to the sea domain of nihility. The 4 heavenly kings also studied Yen, as they didn't have a clue. Right at this moment, a space slit flashed, and then a group of people emerged. Adele. As soon as he saw her, he forgot that he had to interrogate Yen. He couldn't help but shiver, his archaic face filled with surprise. Why are you here? Today it's not safe at all. Why did you come here? They were a group of 5 warriors from Imperial Dark Tribe led by the current chief, Adele. She was wearing an imperial orange dress, which made her noble and graceful. A stunning crystal crown topped her head like a lotus. However, her pretty face was filled with horror. While she was in the holy land of Imperial Dark Tribe, she felt strange commotions in the chaotic space basin. She also received the news that 11 alien worms were attacking 11-star areas. She then took her experts to come and see. As soon as she had arrived, she saw Frederick, Azure Dragon, De Carlos, Lady, the 4 heavenly kings, the elders, and the chief of the 12 families from the god clan. Even if Adele was dumber, she surely knew something earth-shaking had happened in this turbulent area. The experts accompanied her included Gillette at the false immortal realm, 2 first sky of immortal realm experts called Sarah and Fan Ao. The last one was Audrey. Audrey wore a green dress embroidered with many drawings of departed spirits on the hem. Her long dress fitted her beautiful body pretty well, exposing her slender legs. She had a high updo hair bun. Just like her mother, she was very elegant, noble, and proud. However, she also looked cold like a magnificent, icy flower on the snow mountain. She made people's hearts beat faster. She stood by Adele, her cold eyes sparkling with strange light. She suddenly turned to eye Shi Yan. Shi Yan beamed at her and bent his body. Long time no see. Audrey was a little hesitant, so she regarded him curtly. Yeah, long time no see. Congratulations on taking the new throne of the bloodthirsty force. I told my mother that you would succeed. Adele didn't appreciate Shi Yan's enthroning. She had a clear understanding of the bloodthirsty force. She knew her brother Ming Hao and her ex, Xian He. She knew what sorts of men they were. Thus, she didn't believe that Ming Hao and Xian He would let someone order them. At that time, Adele looked down on him and said that Shi Yan would never be able to enthrone because his realm was too low. He hadn't reached the immortal realm yet. If he could enthrone with his incipient god realm cultivation base, it was a humiliation to bloodthirsty. However, Audrey insisted that Shi Yan would succeed. She used to stand shoulder by shoulder with him, and she fought against others when they were on desolate. She had an unknown trust in Shi Yan's power and competence. Apparently, she had keen eyes. When Adele received the news that Shi Yan was the new master, she pulled a face as if she saw ghosts in broad daylight. Today, Adele brought the warriors of Imperial Dark Tribe here. After a glance at Shi Yan, she felt like she saw ghosts in daylight. She couldn't help but scream, You're at third sky of incipient god realm? Geez, what's going on? Recently, she got the news that Shi Yan had just reached first sky of incipient god realm. It was after just a blink, and it was like Shi Yan had crossed a long distance. It was astounding indeed. Aside from her, when others thought about Shi Yan's breakthrough speed, they discolored in fear. Chapter 1348, That Power. Chapter 1348, That Power. Answer. While they were talking, Hui didn't stop its attack. This area was filled with explosions and world-destroying energy shockwaves. However, Xian He and the others were forcefully able to resist the energy attacks, and the 4 heavenly kings had protected the other low-realm warriors of the God clan. Now, Shi Yan had resumed his human form. His fearsome appearance changed after his thought changed. That form was the enhanced appearance of the immortal demon body. He could use it as he pleased. He could change his form with a flicker of his mind. The Imperial Dark Experts coming had drawn the others' attention. The Imperial Dark Experts searched through the crowd and gazed at Shi Yan. They were dumbstruck because of his third sky of incipient god realm cultivation base. We don't have much time. DeCarlo's eyes were so worried. He felt as if someone had filled his heart with lead. It was ultimately heavy. Hearing him, people now pulled themselves together to see the current situation. They now observed Hui. The meat lumps on Hui's body twitched strangely. It looked like billions of small worms were moving to get rid of the planet-sized worm's body. And it happened that way. Boom! 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 The meat lumps exploded and shot out cold, frigid bodies. They were the warriors who the worm had pulled. The worm had absorbed their vitality. They were dead for a long time. However, in this moment, their bodies had a strange energy that was cold and chill to bone. It felt like they were awakened demons. They all looked numb, and there was no emotion in their eyes. Some of them didn't even have enough limbs. There were several insufficient bodies like that with unknown energy moving in their bodies. They emerged on Hui's body and scattered. Frederick, are they corpse slaves that your corpse clan has tamed? Xian He's face twitched as he turned to see Frederick, his eyes cold. No. Frederick wore a grave countenance as he was astounded. Our corpse slaves still have a weak beam of vitality. However, those people don't have a signal of life on them. They're utterly dead, but they have some sort of evil energy in their bodies. Pausing for a while, Frederick continued. Some of them have terrifying energy that isn't less than experts at the immortal realm. Shi Yan changed his visage slightly. Xian He, what's going on? Adele's bold brows arched. She bit her succulent, red lips. After a flash, her sexy body appeared by Xian He with the momentum of taking revenge. What the heck are you guys doing in the turbulent space current? Did you know about the catastrophic commotions in 11-star areas? Do you know how many people were killed? Adele and Xian He used to be lovers. 10,000 years ago, they used to have had promises. After so many years, when she talked to Xian He, she wasn't trying to be polite and elegant. It was just like the old days. Actually, it was a sign of a close relationship. Well, some people got killed. Not a big deal. Xian He pouted his lips. If the clones of that thing gather, I'm not even sure if we can protect so many star areas in our cosmos. Hearing him, the experts of the Imperial Dark Tribe discolored in fear. They were aghast, though. Of course, they hadn't counted that it would be this serious. Audrey swiftly flashed her beautiful figure and reappeared by Shiryen. Her pretty eyes rippled brightly. Is it really serious? Sure, Yen looked at her, complimenting her refined glamour. His eyes scanned her perfectly proportional body. He gave a forced smile. You fused with the god-blessed mainland. Use your origin to sense. Perhaps you can know how formidable that thing is. Audrey's beautiful eyes were deep. She felt slightly irritated because that man couldn't be serious even in such a situation. Women are sensitive. When his vulgar eyes raked through her body, she knew it. However, she couldn't reckon with it. Listening to him, Audrey focused on sensing. So many spirits were dangling in her soul altar. Beams of green flames danced and expanded like electric waves toward Hui. After a long time, her soft body shook hard, her beautiful face aghast. She couldn't help but scream. An absolute beginning creature. Her compatibility with the heaven flame approached almost Haig's level, which was one level higher than Shiryan's. She had almost fused with it completely. After focusing on sensing, she got the information of Hui from the streak of a memory of her origin. It can destroy this entire world, hissed Shiryen. Xian He, where is Ming Hao? It's a critical time. How come he didn't come here? Adele was still interrogating Xian He. Xian, he was always with ease and had a natural poise. He was a true hero, but whenever he faced Adele, he looked awkward as if his hands were tied. He gave her a forced smile. Ming Hao has disappeared with the God Lord unknowingly. He turned to Shiryen, explaining. That kid said that Hui might take Ming Hao and the God Lord to the sea domain of nihility. I don't know if it's true or not. Adele's phoenix eyes gazed at Shiryen. Is it true? Audrey asked. I think so, but I'm not 100% sure. I can vaguely catch it, nodded Shiryen. How did you sense it? Adele wasn't satisfied with his answer and continued asking. Shiryen smiled, but he didn't explain in details. He didn't think that he should explain it to her anyway. Since the Imperial Dark Tribe didn't declare their cooperation with Bloodthirsty Force, she didn't have any relationship with Shiryen, so he didn't need to give her face. Kid, what's that attitude? Adele's beautiful face became cold. Her pretty eyes conveyed her murderous aura. Do you think you're the real master of the Bloodthirsty Force? Both Ming Hao and Xian He have to be polite and respectful when they talk to me. Why are you so disrespectful? Ming Hao is your blood older brother, and Xian He is your ex. Of course, they have to consider your feelings. Why do you matter to me? Shiryen snorted inwardly, his face cold. He didn't care about Adele's fuss. Then, he didn't give his good face to Audrey too. He kept silent and frowned. Xian He, the one you've chosen doesn't have abilities, but his temperament isn't humble at all. Eh? He disrespected the precursors like that. Do you need me to teach him? Adele hissed with a cold complexion. Mother, don't trouble them. Audrey begrudgingly told her to back off. Even you want to support that kid, don't you? It would have been okay if she didn't advise her mother. Adele became angrier and said with a stiff face, "Gillette, teach him a lesson for me. Let him know that he shouldn't consider himself the new leader of Bloodthirsty Force. Let him see the truth. He's still far away from the day he can swagger around." "Don't trouble us," he forced a smile. "I want to make trouble," cried Adele. Being a member of Imperial Dark Tribe, Gillette couldn't go against Adele's orders. Even though he didn't want to do it, he had to fulfill her wish. Just like a dark shadow gliding away, he reappeared above Shi Yan's head. He rose one hand and grabbed something. Many evil spirits shot out of his fingers. They wanted to lift Shi Yan's soul altar out of his sea of consciousness. Now, the numb warriors that shot out of Huey's body had scattered and headed toward the God Warriors and Xianhe's team. However, Adele acted as if she didn't see them. She still wanted to teach Shi Yan a lesson. "Uncle Gillette, don't make more trouble." Audrey hurried to call after him. But it was too late. Adele wore an icy face while looking at Shi Yan and Xianhe. Shi Yan wasn't sure if she was mad at him or Xianhe. Anyway, she wanted to throw a tantrum. Gillette was unable to retreat. He begrudgingly took action. Strangely, as Gillette was attacking him, Shi Yan just stood still. He lifted his head to look at the evil spirits aiming at his head. The strange light dots emerged in his pupils. He had a strange feeling now. Those evil spirits had the power to draw the soul. They could extract the host's soul from the soul altar. In fact, his host's soul wanted to fly up. Once his host's soul was taken away from his soul altar, his life was going to be controlled. It wasn't a joke. Of course, he believed that Gillette wouldn't dare to harm him. However, as he pulled himself together to counterattack, the mutant soul consciousness that grumblingly swarmed toward the evil spirit Gillette had released like water overflowing a broken dam. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. All of a sudden, the evil spirits that Gillette had released were burned. His strange soul consciousness was like a shadow piercing through the spirits and aiming at Gillette's chest. His instinct made him frightened. He hurried to mobilize the defending energy, but then he found that an invisible energy had quietly seeped into his body. He went numb. When he found something wrong, his body was invaded by that strange energy. His blood, flesh, God power, spirit, and soul were about to scatter. His body and soul altar was about to collapse or explode. His face became so ugly, he couldn't help but shout, "What kind of evil power is it?" He knew some energy was vandalizing his body, but he couldn't know what it was or locate it. It was like having someone using a sword to prick him, but he didn't know where it hurt or where the sword was. He only knew one thing: your body and soul altar are being destroyed. Soon, you will be broken and perish. It was an unknown power that can collapse people's mind, but it was invisible and people couldn't recognize it. Azure Dragon's eyes brightened in the crowd. He screamed, "Shi Yan, show mercy." Shi Yan was immersed in a magical power of his soul consciousness. Hearing him calling, he woke up. His thought flickered, and he retrieved his soul consciousness. Gillette recovered. He had cold sweat all over his body. When he looked at Shi Yan, he thought he was watching a demon, his face ashen. Several seconds later, he was shaken hard. He couldn't help but scream. "It's that power. The power Bloodthirsty controlled that year." Hearing him, all people, including the God Clan's experts, were dumbstruck. Chapter 1349 Mistress. Chapter 1349 Mistress. 10,000 years ago, many experts had besieged Bloodthirsty and made him return to Earth, leaving only a broken skeleton. The precursors of the God Clan, Heaven River Temple, Thousand Fantasy Sect, and Broken Hall had seized them. After 10,000 years, the experts of the God Clan and the warriors at the Immortal Realm like Ling Xiang, Caesar, and Lorraine had put their hopes in Bloodthirsty's remains. They wanted to discover the mysterious power. However, they all failed. In many people's eyes, that power was the foundation that helped Bloodthirsty become the supreme expert. Also, it was the primary reason that the God Lord and the other experts had to kill Bloodthirsty. Everybody wanted this power. Today, this power reappeared in the universe. Bloodthirsty's successor had triggered it. How could it not shake the entire world? Now, everybody looked at Shi Yan with hot eyes. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The corpses flew out of Huey's body, accelerated, and flew like a shooting light. The 3 experts in the front of that horde had damaged bodies. No one knew how long they were there. They all had big holes in their chest where pungent, sticky pus oozed out. They could vaguely see their twitching stomachs that made their hearts cold and their scalps numb. The 3 corpses had blank looks without any human emotion. However, their bodies had a surging evil energy. Rhombus sword lights shot out from their mouths. The sword lights were so cold, but they were bright and transparent, stabbing into the chests of the 3 God Clan's elders. The 3 elders at the incipient God realm blacked out as they lost their lives without having a chance to scream. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Countless rhombus sword lights showered at them fiercely. The experts' eyes brightened, but they didn't have a chance to check Shi Yan's marvel. They had to urge their power Upanishads to shield them from the attack. Their god power created the sea or the ice mountain, the dazzling light of the sun and the moon, and even the thick blood streaming. Their magical abilities had made the space current magnificent as if it had a beautiful firework performance. A handsome man emerged at the head of the giant worm. He smiled, his eyes dark and sinister. He was now quietly watching the others. Tianxia! Xian, he, Frederick, and De Carlos shouted at the same time. They were shaken hard as they couldn't believe it. Tianxia was the president of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce. In this cosmos, his force was very powerful, and it ranked right after the God Clan, Bloodthirsty Force, and Imperial Dark Tribe. And more importantly, the forces like Thousand Fantasy Sect, the Broken Hall, and Heaven River Temple listened to Tianxia. They would act under his command. The filthy rich president of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce appeared above Huey's head, and he was standing there safe and sound. Everybody had a bad premonition. They knew that this situation was indeed strange and dangerous. Even the 4 heavenly kings of the God Clan had to knit their brows, especially Heavenly King, Divine Marshal. He looked at Tianxia, his eyes restless and frightened. He suddenly cried, "No, it's not right. You weren't this strong." Just previously, he had received the God Lord's orders to visit the headquarters of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce to meet Tianxia and persuade him to stand on the God Clan side. Of course, Tianxia didn't agree. Because of that, Divine Marshal made an excuse to fight against Tianxia once. At that time, Tianxia was at second sky of Immortal Realm and was cultivating fire power Upanishad. He wasn't weaker than Divine Marshal. Their match ended with a tie. However, Tianxia had sent shivers down Divine Marshal's spine. It was a chill from the soul. He knew Tianxia was much stronger compared to how he was at that battle. If they fought against Tianxia today, he knew he would be defeated and he wouldn't even be able to run away. He could feel that the aura from Tianxia now was similar to when he faced the God Lord. "Ladies and gentlemen, long time no see." Tianxia smiled gently, his makings excellent. "Welcome to this humble place. I, Tianxia, on behalf of my mistress, send our best regards to you." A beautiful figure appeared behind Tianxia. Unexpectedly, it was Ziyao. She was sitting on a brilliant 7-colored throne that was made of precious jades and crystals. She sat cross-legged on the throne, her face indifferent and arrogant while she looking at the others. After she had emerged, Tianxia bowed to her modestly and introduced her to the others. "This is my mistress." After Ziyao and Tianxia showed themselves, The fierce corpses halted and stiffly floated around the others. They were looking at their targets with blank eyes. Tianxia, what the heck you are doing? Xian, he grimaced, trying to suppress his anger. He shouted, Since when did she become your mistress? You're the president of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce, but now you're kneeling under a woman. Since when did you, Tianxia, become so shameless? It was also what others couldn't figure out. Mistress was always my mistress. It has never changed. It's Tianxia's honor to become her servant. Also, mistress has created me and made me who I am today. Tianxia smiled and didn't cease. In front of many people, he sounded so proud as he didn't think it was humiliating. He thought it was honorable. People then turned to look at Ziyao. Most of them were bewildered, frowning, and trying to guess Ziyao's identity. Not many people in this group knew Ziyao. Only Xian, he and Frederick knew that Shi Yan had a woman like that on his side. However, since when did that woman had become Tianxia's mistress? They had no clue. She's that big worm, hissed Audrey all of a sudden. Is she that worm? Adele couldn't make head or tail out of it. How could it be? She's so beautiful. How could she be that disgusting worm? It's her. Audrey took a cold breath, her high breast thrusting out and making her more gorgeous and elegant. I've fused with the origin of our homeland. It has the memories. The aura on her body is exactly like that big worm. She's an absolute beginning creature. Hearing him, the others were stunned. Quickly, they turned stern. Kid, is she telling the truth? Frederick glared at Shi Yan, his face dark and serious. The light in his eyes flickered furiously. Shi Yan sighed and nodded. Audrey is telling the truth. Ziyao is Hui, actually. While he was talking, Ziyao didn't pay attention to the others. Her beautiful eyes were filled with a strange light as she eyed Shi Yan from a distance. Her emotionless face slightly changed and showed a gleam of complex emotion. Shi Yan felt bitter. He understood that Ziyao had controlled the entire situation. Tianxia and so many corpses had given her full assurance. He knew that he had been tender-hearted for a while, which gave her time to plan and overturn the situation. Wetterson, the only person who could hurt her, was dead because of his exhausted life energy. The god, Lord, and Ming Hao, who could threaten her, were delivered to the sea domain of nihility. Also, her clones were coming here at fast speed. Who could stop her now? Tianxia, what happened after all? Xian, he shouted. Tianxia's smile was warm. He shrugged relaxedly. Mistress is like desolate and devour. They are the creatures from the absolute beginning era. They were the very first creatures in this universe. It's not something that low creatures like you could understand. Mistress needs your power to recover. Mistress wants to destroy desolate and desolate's incipient extent, which is also the universe you're dwelling in. It's simple like that. The members of the God clan didn't have many emotions when they heard it from Tianxia because the God Lord had told them beforehand. They knew that secret. However, Shi Yan, Xian He, Adele, and Azure Dragon were greatly shocked as if a lightning bolt had just struck their heads. They felt a little dizzy. The cosmos they were dwelling in was just desolate's incipient. Desolate had created their world. This heavy bomb had destroyed their minds and left them baffled and sinking into extreme fear. The world we're living in is just desolate's incipient extent. So how about us? We are just low creatures. Xian, he mumbled as if he had lost his mind. The others weren't much different from him. All felt like collapsing. Only Shi Yan could calm down quickly. He had a marvelous feeling that nothing could compare to. What Tianxia said had enlightened him. He recognized the truth now. Until now, he was still doubtful. He doubted everything since his own incipient extent was expanding to a vast sea of stars. He had just used the soul consciousness to check it thoroughly. He found that the suns, moon, stars, mountains, and rivers, and even weathers in his incipient extent were very similar to their kind. While his soul and body had been transformed, his incipient extent had changed too. Besides the creatures from different races, his incipient extent was similar to the cosmos he was living in now. He could create the skies or the sea of stars. So could Desolate. He believed in what Tianxia said almost immediately. Desolate created you all. Ah no, to be exact, the 4 limbs of Desolate did that. Grace Mainland, God Bless Mainland, Ancient God Continent, and Ancient Demon Continent were parts of Desolate. They were detached because Desolate got hurt. Tianxia turned around and found Zi Yao indifferent. She didn't look offended, nor was she losing her interest. Thus, Tianxia continued explaining with ease. Everybody was immersed in the effect of Tianxia's words. Her 11 clones will arrive soon. Do you still want to listen to him? De Carlos gritted his teeth, then shouted all of a sudden. Everybody was shaken hard. They pulled themselves together. They understood that Zi Yao didn't need to be hurried now. In fact, they should be the ones who were hurrying. Once her clones gathered, who could be lucky enough to escape this area. Zi Yao's eyes had a mocking light. She looked at De Carlos from a distance, as if she wasn't afraid that he could make anything different. With Tianxia here, and Wetterson was dead, and the God Lord and Ming Hao disappeared, she thought that only the host soul here was enough to threaten everybody else. We're going to offer you an exit, Tianxia smiled and suggested seriously. All of you give away a flow of your soul seal. Be subdued. Worship my mistress as your master. My mistress will bestow you with power. You can then return to Desolate's incipient extent to work. That's how you can save your life. Chapter 1350, The 12-Headed Serpent. Chapter 1350, The 12-Headed Serpent. Tianxia gave his suggestion with a smile. Everybody put on a heavy complexion. When they looked at Tianxia, their eyes were piercing as they hated that they couldn't crush his bones into powder. Zi Yao was sitting on a 7-colored crystal throne. She observed people with her cold, arrogant eyes. She didn't put anyone into her eyes. It seemed like letting Tianxia negotiate with them was already her showing great mercy. Xianhe, is this person that powerful? As Adele had just arrived, she didn't know much about the absolute beginning creatures. She arched her brows and looked at them in disdain. Will she be able to kill all of us? She just has a big body. Except for that, how strong is she? Mother! Audrey hissed, her elegant face filled with fear. She's really formidable. Audrey had fused with the origin of God-blessed mainland. From her soul seal, she knew that Hui was very intimidating. She knew the level of this absolute beginning creature. She knew that its realm was beyond them, and she explained bitterly. If you want to compare, it's like comparing our 4 great creatures with the human clan or the man clan. There's a large gap in the level of living forms that will never be crossed. Adele finally changed her visage. Our clan serves only one master, snorted a white-bearded elder of the Elder Committee. Tianxia, you're too innocent when you ask us to worship an unknown monster like that. You must have lost your mind, or that thing must have eaten your brains. That elder was at second sky of incipient god realm and was cultivating wind power. He was always an arrogant one. In the past 10,000 years in this vast cosmos, the God Clan was the overlord. Bloodthirsty Force, Heavenly Monster Tribe, and Imperial Dark Tribe had been secluding. They didn't dare to face the God Clan directly. As they had conquered so many star areas, they had formed their proud and overbearing characteristics. How could they allow someone to ride on their heads? In this elder's eyes, Tianxia was just like a dog that barked at others based on his master's power. He wanted to use the threat from this absolute beginning create, so Tsunami Chamber of Commerce could replace the God Clan to be the overlord. They would never allow that. Yao looked indifferently. From a distance, she frowned at that elder. Tian Xie chuckled. He understood his master's idea. His power changed, and an evil light radiated from his eyes. That light had a beautiful red-violet hue, shooting, like a meteor, aimed at that elder. Yan's heart sank. He was frightened when he looked at that shooting star. Unexpectedly, that bunch of light had the power that could be compared to the God Lord or Ming Hao. Although it wasn't the mysterious power that Yan had just acquired today, it was also strange and intimidating. It seemed to be able to cross the spaces too. The two heavenly King Carefree and divine marshal of the God clan were standing near that elder. Seeing Tian Xie take action, they just sneered and urged their powers. However, that elder screeched when they hadn't triggered their power yet. A bleeding hole appeared in his chest. His internal organs, like lungs and hearts, were stirred into a pulp. Blood gushed out of the wound like a rapid stream. Flowing with the blood was his life. That red-violet meteor had appeared right behind his back after abnormally crossing the space. It had hurt him in just a blink of an eye. He vomited thick blood. His life, magnetic field, slowly exhausted. His soul altar and sea of consciousness collapsed. Before he died, the surprised look was still on his face when he looked at Carefree and Divine Marshal as if he doubted why the two heavenly kings didn't help him. He didn't know that Divine Marshal and Carefree were urging their powers. It was just that the meteor was so fast. While they were still gathering their energy, it killed the elder. The light that shot out from Tian Xie's eyes had killed an elder right in front of Carefree and Divine Marshal. The four heavenly kings were enraged. Then, the four heavenly kings, Carefree, Divine Marshal, Easygoing, and Light, all stormed toward Tian Xie without talking a word. They were as fast as lightning. Swoosh! 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 The cold and stiff bodies of the dead warriors shielded Tian Xie. Those warriors had blank looks on their cold faces. They all spurted some sort of dark gas that carried chaotic magnetic fields of outer space, driving the evil, unknown energies inside the turbulent space current. Some corpses had the aura of the immortal realm. If they still had the aura, they could still use the power Upanishads. The ice wall, ice sabers, sea of fire, and wild lightning multiplied forcefully and created a fearful, endless intimidation. Even the four great heavenly kings struggled a lot, and they couldn't create any threat to Tian Xie. The smile on Tian Xie's face didn't cease. He stood humbly and respectfully under Yao's throne. He spoke to the others again. "We gave you guys a chance. It's you who can catch it or not. If we can't resist, we should go early." At this moment, De Carlos sighed and suggested, his face heavy. People didn't get his idea. "If we don't go now, we won't be able to flee anymore when her 11 clones come." De Carlos's eyes were dark as he said, helplessly, "She's too powerful." Before this, her clones were in different areas inside the chaotic space basin to draw the energy from warriors who accidentally fell into this place. Today, she's still recovering. She still needs a lot to be in her supreme condition. Thus, she had to step back when Wetterson attacked her. She also delivered the God, Lord, and Ming Hao away. Even she isn't in her best condition. We can't resist her. When her 11 clones gather, even the God, Lord, and Ming Hao won't be able to do anything. Is she that dangerous? Adele's pretty face paled. As the matriarch of Imperial Dark Tribe, there weren't many things that could scare her. She was calm even when she had to face the God Lord. She wasn't really afraid of him. However, listening to De Carlos talking about how intimidating Hui was today, it was the first time she knew that in this immensely vast universe, the God, Lord, and Ming Hao weren't the ones with the highest realm, the absolute beginning creatures with the true existences atop the pyramid of creatures. In the eyes of those absolute creatures, all of them were just vulnerable ants. "All right, you should open the space passage now." Xian, he made a quick decision after pondering for a few seconds. De Carlos didn't talk more. Filled with regret, he urged his power Upanishad to force a space passage. Right at this moment, Shi Yan saw Zi Yao looking at them. He suddenly had a chill in his heart. He could see a gleam of mocking in her eyes. It was the glimpse of not giving a damn because she knew that she would definitely win. It was the calmness that she had as she knew she had everything in control. Don't stir up the space energy fluctuations. Shi Yan screamed as he felt that something would go wrong. He wanted to stop him. However, he was one step late. De Carlos urged his power Upanishad and used his soul consciousness to connect to space. However, while doing so, he found an unknown energy pour into space. The commotions his soul consciousness had given way for that mysterious energy to intrude his sea of consciousness. Instantly, he felt tens of thousands of swords stabbing his sea of consciousness. His sea of consciousness was damaged badly. Even his soul altar had cracks. At that glimpse of time, his soul was hurt. Tui. De Carlos was ashen when he spurted out blood. He looked frightened when he turned to Zi Yao, the one who looked indifferent and emotionless. He clutched his chest and said desperately, "She has used that energy to affect space. I can't tear space. My soul got hurt." His body looked like a smashed mirror with so many cracks where blood oozed out. It looked like a cloth soaked in blood and someone was squeezing it. The expert at second sky of a mortal realm, cultivating space power, Upanishad, couldn't escape. Someone had ambushed him and damaged him severely. De Carlos was known as the toughest target to be murdered. People even guessed that even God, Lord, and Ming Hao couldn't escape as fast as De Carlos. There were times when he was considered the toughest warrior to deal with. However, today he got hurt and the two who could compare to him were delivered to somewhere no one knew. His wounds were like a hammer pounding on people's chests. Everybody felt a great shock. At this moment, the first clone of the giant worm came on the wave. While the space waves rippled, it merged with Huey's body. People screamed ear-piercingly as the other clones of the worm emerged continuously and merged with the host body. After the 11 clones had combined with the host body, people saw that the giant worm's volume now increased 10 times. Its shape also changed. It wasn't a big worm anymore. Now, it was a 12-headed giant serpent. Huey's real body was a formidable 12-headed giant serpent. The snake had a dark blue body with many complex patterns. Those patterns were hiding the mysteries of the universe. The 12-headed serpent gave people a strange but perfectly beautiful impression. It looked like a masterpiece of the Creator. The head in the middle of the 12 heads wore a magnificent imperial crown. That was her main brain. At this moment, Zi Yao was sitting on that exquisite 7-colored crown. She looked even more mesmerizing. Her body had all the features of a charming, sexy, and gorgeous lady. Her attractiveness shook even the soul magnetic field. Even the top warriors like the 4 heavenly kings, Xian He, Azure Dragon, and Adele, a woman, were charmed. They looked puzzled and passionate as if they were enchanted. Her charm had affected both male and female warriors. It was at an unimaginable level. Tian Xia was on one knee, his face modest and respectful. It looked like her glamour had frozen his heart. He knew that Zi Yao was in her most terrifying condition now. Her aura had threatened him and made him fearful instinctively. He quivered and didn't dare to stand upright. As the other top warriors were gazing at her, Zi Yao's pretty eyes shined more as if they were emitting a pink halo that could absorb the soul. Her eyes raked through the crowd and fixed on Shi Yan. Her lips parted and a gentle, soft voice arose in Shi Yan's head. "Come to me." Shi Yan was standing by Audrey. His eyes became misty, and he started to walk toward her. However, he suddenly shook on the way as if he had just awakened. He was frightened. He directly turned around and retreated without saying a word. He was walking determinedly away from her. Chapter 1351, A Bloody Battle. Chapter 1351, A Bloody Battle. Now, all the warriors inside the chaotic space basin were enchanted. They looked as if they had lost their minds. Both male and female warriors had their minds occupied by Zi Yao's charming glamour. It was a charming evil power that couldn't be described. It struck people's host soul and sea of consciousness directly. They were affected and were unable to resist. Sure, Yen was panic-stricken. He didn't dare to stop, turning around and walking away with a resolute face. If the Origin's fluctuation in his head hadn't touched him, and if he hadn't been able to see that mysterious power, his soul altar would have been invaded too. He could clearly see that Zi Yao had used the invisible power to release her tremendous soul consciousness and intrude people's heads, enticing their host souls and puzzling them all. In this crowd, only he had touched that magical power. He had recognized the evil attack, so he was able to retreat timely. He didn't dare to linger. While backing off, his co-soul was creating a connection with Grace Mainland. He wanted to use the soul consciousness to create a space passage. Swish! A brilliant door, like a galaxy, appeared behind him. Inside the door, there was a vague glimpse of the immense, endless sea. As the owner of Grace Mainland, no matter where he was, he could return to the planet in any minute. It was a unique supernatural power of the warriors fused with the Origins. Anyway, Psang Yin and Audrey had low levels, and they didn't know Space Power Upanishad, so they couldn't do that. However, Shi Yin knew the God Lord could do that. He wondered if the God Lord had seized the chance to return to ancient God continent or not. As the warriors here were enchanted, they were going to fall into terrible danger. Shi Yin understood that at his realm and cultivation base, even though he had understood that mysterious power, he couldn't overturn the whole situation here. Moreover, in this horde of people, he had only cared about Zi Yao. However, Zi Yao was the ringleader of all of this. It was truly a joke of the Creator. He wanted to avoid the danger for now. After he had opened the door, he was about to flee to Grace Mainland. The halo in Zi Yao's eyes revolved. She looked at him in the distance, her face surprised. She was curious as to how he was able to get rid of the soul enchantment. He could back off resolutely, though. After the true body of the giant serpent was reunited, Zi Yao had always been emotionless, but now she changed. She looked excited as if she had finally become a real creature, lively and emotional. Seeing Shi Yin want to leave, she sent him another message. Why do you need to leave? Will I eat you? There are so many people here, but I won't kill you. Only you. Can't you stay with me? Her voice and her soul energy fluctuation were identical to the real Zi Yao. It felt like her soul and consciousness had returned to her. However, Shi Yin didn't dare to buy it. He didn't answer, shutting off his sea of consciousness and keeping silent. He attempted to run away. Zi Yao's beautiful eyes became cold. She snorted, and her snort seemed to carry endless evil energy that could change space energy fluctuations. The light door that Shi Yin had just created was sealed by layers of light. The glimpse of the endless sea behind the door faded. You don't know what's good for you. Zi Yao looked unhappy. Tianxia's face was cold and dark. He turned into a rainbow light without waiting for Zi Yao's orders. He glided through the group of God Clan's experts and Xian he to reach Shi Yin in order to capture him. Shi Yin was frightened. He finally pulled himself together at the critical moment. Flows of thought crossed his head continuously. He recognized that by himself, surviving would be tough. At this moment, Zi Yao was so strange and evil. No one could counter her single-handedly. If he wanted to get rid of Zi Yao, he had to make everything chaotic. He needed more people. He made up his mind as soon as this thought arose in his head. He touched his glabella. His soul consciousness changed and rippled like invisible water waves. His soul consciousness was equipped with something cold and clear that was specified to refine the souls and awaken the minds. The power he got was exactly like Zi Yao's. It was the power that only the absolute beginning creatures could control. Just like he guessed, this magical power worked. The soul consciousness with the freezing energy seeped into Audrey's soul altar, who was standing closest to him. Audrey was startled. She was awakened. Her graceful body quivered slightly as she screamed, "What happened?" His soul consciousness expanded rapidly. Soon, Xianhe, Adele, and Frederick were awakened. He had also woken up the God Clan's experts. They all changed their countenances and gathered energy to create a seal and barrier to protect their soul altars. They knew that Zi Yao had just occupied their minds. This time they learned their lesson. All tried to cover their sea of consciousness and soul altar to prevent their souls from being invaded one more time. "Sure, Yen, what happened?" Audrey woke up first. Sure, Yen was the first one she saw. She was smart enough to figure out that Sure Yen was the one who had saved them. "Tianxie, you're crazy." "Xian," he sneered, turning into a long blood river and shooting toward Tianxie. At this moment, Tianxie wanted to capture Sure Yen. Xian, he found that only Sure Yen could break Zi Yao's soul enchantment. He knew that if they got Sure Yen, they wouldn't have a chance to resist. Thus, he urged all of his power to help Sure Yen. Many people understood this too. Frederick, Lady, and Azure Dragon were touched. They gathered around Sure Yen to prevent Tianxie from approaching and controlling Sure Yen. "Protect that kid." Adele was bewildered for a while before she could get a hold of herself. She screamed her order. The Imperial Dark Tribe's warriors moved and surrounded Sure Yen. Together with Xianhe, they created a pressure on Tianxie. The rainbow light around Tianxie stretched endlessly. His beams of light twittered strangely as if they were insects communicating with each other. Those outer space divine lights were exactly what Zi Yao had controlled. Their auras were similar to the Origin's heaven flames. They were much more powerful and mysterious than the God Clan's light power Upanishad. Swoosh! 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 Xianhe's eyes turned crimson. The viscous blood rivers flew out of his eyes and aligned with each other. The thick smell of blood emitted. The blood rivers bubbled torrentially. Whenever one bubble burst off, it sent a flow of blood qi. The blood qi gathered and condensed, creating a blood dragon. It had a quiet aura with a momentum that could deliver all the creatures to death. The vitality rose from deep inside the blood rivers. The death and life didn't attack each other, but life power had triggered death power and increased the death magnetic field to the acme. The endless rainbow light Tianxie had released was covered in Xian, his blood river. Tianxie's face didn't change as he spoke faintly. "Xianhe, our power were equal, but now you're far behind me." The rainbow lights were like dragons that struggled in the deep abyss, trying to move through the blood river and head to Sure Yen. "Tui!" Xian, he spurted blood. His blood condensed in the air and created a blood drill that was crystal and sparkling. The life energy emitted immensely from the drill. Blood sacrifice. Xian, he gave a low-pitched soul. The blood river was like a boiling pot or a lava pond with so many bursting blood bubbles. A red blood with a dense, murderous aura in the eyes emerged. The dragon had formidable life energy that then shot out of the blood river, roaring inaudibly and heading to bite Tianxie. Tianxie wasn't affected. His energy fluctuated and then he exploded into countless light dots and vanished. He conjured up behind Sure Yen and raised his hand to grab Sure Yen. "Go." Sure Yen was still calm. He sprayed a mouthful of blood on his bloody sword. Instantly, all the eyes on the sword opened. They became like evil insects that crawled on the sword and enhanced it. It turned into a sharp beam of blood and directly stabbed Tianxie. After his life form was greatly transformed, His blood wasn't the immortal demon blood anymore. It was something with different magical abilities that he couldn't figure out yet. His blood now carried the unknown power, which made his aura and energy one level more powerful than the immortal demon blood. It was like the difference between the human blood and the immortal demon blood. It had more features that he hadn't studied yet. Thus, when the bloody eyes opened, his energy rocketed instantly. Boom! An earth-shaking explosion arose. The blood sword turned into a blood eye and hit Tianxia's chest hard. Tianxia's bones exploded. He didn't look calm and relaxed anymore. Looking at the massive eye on his chest, he was astounded. Flesh armor. Shi Yin cried inwardly. The bloody shield was like a strange flower blooming on his body that him quickly. While his soul consciousness changed, he transformed into a body he had just evolved. Fearsome spikes appeared. His back cracked and a pair of massive bone wings jutted out from the cracks. His claws grew as sharp as a saber. The blood in his body was now like a strong wine burning that gave him a flow of earth-destroying energy and wildly ran through his veins. The blood, flesh, bones, and even his internal organs were surging continuously. At this moment, Shi Yin had confidence that he could resist the immortal realm expert. The blood eye on Tianxia's chest glowed in an evil blood light, which was like the spikes of a hedgehog thrusting into Tianxia's chest. Tianxia couldn't help but scream in pain. He changed his visage and shouted, "I didn't expect that your life form would reach Bloodthirsty's level by now. Well done. You're worthy of being his successor." Thump, thump, thump. Tianxia's heart beat frantically like a planet explosion. The surging energy he had could compare to the expert at third sky of a mortal realm. The blood I directly pushed away like a rubber ball. The formidable energy came like a seething sea and followed the blood eye to cover Shi Yin. At this moment, the threat that Tianxia was booming could compare to Brian the God Lord or the Soul Control Chief Ming Hao. It was really tremendous. "How dare you!" Frederick, Lady, and Azure Dragon roared at the same time. They took action immediately and released magical power. Zi Yao observed everything from her throne above the imperial crown on Huey's host head. Her beautiful eyes gazed at Shi Yin. Her hands balled into fists. She looked touched. It seemed like Shi Yin in his new fighting form with a mysterious energy had made her recall something. Chapter 1352, Causes and Effects. Chapter 1352, Causes and Effects. Tianxia had eaten Caesar, Ling Xiang, and Lorraine in the secret subterranean palace of Tsunami Chamber of Commerce to increase his realm and power. He was now as strong as the God Lord or Ming Hao. The power he was performing at wasn't ordinary at all. No one was going to successfully be able to deal with Tianxia single-handedly. However, Frederick, Lady, and Azure Dragon had joined hands with Xian, so even if Tianxia had earth-shaking power, he would still have to struggle. "Tianxia, you discreetly cooperate with the alien to plot against our world. You deserve 1,000 deaths." Lady thundered. Countless beams of lightning bolts and balls shelled on Tianxia unceasingly. "Ridiculous." Tianxia pouted his lips and said coldly, "I'm not from your world. My mistress created me just like how Desolate created Bloodthirsty. I entered your world, Desolate's incipient extent, to prepare to wake up the mistress." Hearing him, everybody was shocked. Their eyes showed their astonishment. What Tianxia had just told them was so frightening. Until now, Bloodthirsty's identity was still a mystery that many people had tried to discover for a long time in vain. Tianxia said that Desolate had created Bloodthirsty. How could that be? Boom, boom, boom. The rainbow lights shot out of Tianxia's body and smashed the lightning balls that Lady had created. He said with a ferocious face, "So, You don't believe me? Can't you reason it? At this moment, Xian He and Frederick had gathered by Shi Yan and used their best abilities to protect him from harm. They all recognized that Zi Yao could use that mysterious power evilly to seep into people's soul altars to snatch their minds in just a blink of an eye. Only Shi Yan, the other person who had such a power, could restore their sound minds. Thus, Shi Yan being safe and sound would be the key to this battle. He was the effective shield that they could use to resist Zi Yao. If you said that Devour had created Bloodthirsty, we could have bought it. At this moment, Shi Yan's face was cold and stern. The blood armor fitted his body well. It looked like he got a peculiar red flower bloom on his chest. A pair of bone wings flapped behind his back. The energy rising in his body could smash the whole world. The bloody eyes that transformed from the blood sword quietly appeared above his head. The blood light sparkled in the bloody eyes, continuously releasing evil energy that could affect people's sea of consciousness. Audrey's beautiful eyes showed her unknown fear. She gazed at him, her lips slightly parting. Apparently, she was horror-struck. Adele, her mother, and the warriors of Imperial Dark Tribe were also fearful and strangely looking at Shi Yan. They had never seen Shi Yan's body after the recent transformation. At this moment, they were shaken hard. All felt insecure. The surging life magnetic field from his body was so immense that they had subdued the others. They felt so dispirited that they had no way to resist. It was like when they faced Bloodthirsty the Ear. It was like a low-level creature seeing a high-level creature for the first time. It would instinctively recognize the difference. Xian He, Frederick, and Azure Dragon stopped attacking Tianxia. They wore a serious face. Their eyes sparkled as they were waiting for Tianxia to explain further. As the leaders of the Bloodthirsty force, Xian He and Frederick didn't know Bloodthirsty's identity. Previously, Ming Hao had guessed that Bloodthirsty was the combination of the bloodlines from the four great creatures. However, it was just his improving guess. Tianxia had a close relationship with Hui. As Hui was one of the absolute beginning creatures, it must have told Tianxia a lot of information of that era. They had a premonition that Tianxia would tell them the truth about Bloodthirsty's identity. Tianxia turned his head around and looked at Zi Yao to ask for her opinion. Zi Yao nodded arrogantly. Tianxia respectfully bowed to her. Then he turned around and smiled relaxedly. Desolate was hurt severely. Its body was divided into 5 parts. Desolate was the brain. Grace Mainland, God-blessed Mainland, Ancient God Continent, and Ancient Demon Continent are the 4 clones, the 4 individuals. Each of these 4 individuals has respectively created the God Clan, Immortal Demon Clan, Heavenly Monster Tribe, and Imperial Dark Tribe. 10,000 years ago, the precursors of the 4 great races had entered Desolate and tried to tame it. Actually, it was the operation of the 4 clones in an attempt to replace the brain. They failed in the end. Many years later, the 4 clones of Desolate have begun to fight against each other. They have stimulated the 4 great creatures to fight inside Desolate's incipient extent. They want to turn this place into an unceasing war that would shatter the star areas. It would make the incipient extent heavier and lengthen the time to awaken the brain. This time, everybody focused on listening to Tianxia. No one took action, because what Tianxia was talking about related to the mysteries and variables of this world. These things had troubled them for countless years. Everybody wanted to know the causes. The other 4 had failed 10,000 years ago. Desolate killed them all. Desolate then recognized that if it continued to let the 4 clones act rashly, something would happen and Desolate wouldn't be able to control it. It then used the blood of the 4 precursors to create Bloodthirsty. Bloodthirsty's blood carried the advantages of the 4 great creatures, which was close to the perfect blood of the creatures in the absolute beginning era. Desolate created Bloodthirsty because it wanted to use Bloodthirsty to destroy the four great clans. It wanted to use Bloodthirsty to merge the clones with the host brain to finally awaken it. Unfortunately, while Desolate was imparting the power Upanishads to Bloodthirsty, the one who had just gained the consciousness, Devour attacked them. Devour is the sea of blood, the holy land of the Bloodthirsty force. It appears as a dark abyss. It's also one of the absolute beginning creatures, and is Desolate's archenemy. Devour had seized a chance when Desolate was weakened after creating Bloodthirsty to give Bloodthirsty its power Upanishad. Devour's main power Upanishad is devouring. With the 8 great evil power Upanishads, Devour wanted to use Bloodthirsty to destroy the creatures and Desolate's incipient extent. Bloodthirsty was the key to the battle that occurred billions of years between Desolate and Devour. Desolate wanted to use Bloodthirsty to reunite the host brain and the clones to wake up. However, Devour had ambushed them. Devour had given Bloodthirsty its power Upanishads too. Desolate's training and Devour's power Upanishads had made Bloodthirsty appear like lightning that crossed the skies and surpassed the 4 great creatures. Right at the beginning, Bloodthirsty had slaughtered people everywhere and killed so many. With devouring power Upanishad, he had accumulated energy and reached an extremely supreme level. Bloodthirsty was so talented. After that, without a teacher, he could still perceive and control the dark energy that only the creatures from the absolute beginning era could. Slowly, he recognized the meaning of his existence. He realized that he was just a key in the battle between Desolate and Devour. Thus, Bloodthirsty became unusual in the later stage. He didn't kill anymore, but began to enroll disciples and created his force. He wanted to rebel against everything. In his final stage, Bloodthirsty had surpassed the immortal realm. He had become a creature that could compare to the creatures from the absolute beginning era. He wanted to get rid of Desolate's and Devour's arrangement. He wanted to fly out of this universe. However, Devour had confined him. In the end, he had a battle with Devour. Although he had hurt Devour, he was damaged too. While he was so feeble, Desolate attacked him. Desolate had made the god Lord join hands with many experts to destroy him completely. After 100,000 years, Bloodthirsty was the first expert in this incipient extent to surpass everything to swagger in the sea of stars. He had learned the dark energy. He got the ability to destroy this world entirely. If his fate didn't end here, he would have succeeded. Tianxia turned about and gave Zi Yao a respectful look. He turned to the others and continued. My mistress had received the worst damage. She couldn't compete with Desolate and Devour right from the start. However, she had seized the chance when Desolate and Devour had fought against each other for billions of years without a break, and the existence of Bloodthirsty had damaged both Desolate and Devour to make them dormant. Thus, in this vast universe today, my mistress is the true expert. As long as you serve my mistress, she will forgive you for trespassing her. You guys could detach from this world. Billions of years had passed, and Desolate and Devour have been fighting unceasingly. How could they do that? Frederick was surprised. Tianxia gave a disdainful smile. Your bloodthirsty forces' holy land is a dark abyss. It devours consciousness. It's just like how you used your soul consciousness to intrude Xian, his incipient extent to mess it up and destroy it. Do you get it now? Frederick sounded astounded. The dark abyss of our bloodthirsty force is the condensation of Devour's soul consciousness. Devour has intruded Desolate's incipient extent from another universe? Right. Each of the battles at their level could last for billions of years. Well, I can say it like this. They were engaged in a battle until now. Their methods of battling are something that we will never understand. Bloodthirsty was just a small piece of music in their fight, explained Tianxia. Everybody was frightened. Come to think about this, the dark abyss, which was Devour's soul consciousness, had intruded Desolate's incipient extent. The two creatures that no one knew how long had existed fought against each other for countless years. And the warriors here were just the tiny creatures dwelling inside Desolate's incipient extent. It was possible that when the absolute beginning creatures like Desolate or Devour looked at them, they thought that they were looking at some insects or ants inside their incipient extent. It was a bomb that exploded their minds. Tian Xie had explained it to them, simply and frankly. Shi Yan understood it well. While his mind changed, his soul consciousness was moving through the galaxy-like incipient extent. He was gliding through many star areas. His face now held a forced smile. If he was just a raindrop or a small insect in someone's incipient extent, and that person could see every act of his, how sorrowful should he be? No wonder Bloodthirsty had risked his life to rebel and get rid of everything. He wanted to break this cage. Unfortunately, Desolate had created Bloodthirsty. It was his most terrible misery and also the reason why he failed. Just like today, he had fused with Grace Mainland and was able to observe the commotions of every creature on Grace Mainland. He had the ability to control the members of Heavenly Monster Tribe. It was because he hadn't fused completely with Grace Mainland. If he had utterly fused with Grace Mainland's origin, he could be like the God Lord who could control the life of each member of Heavenly Monster Tribe. Shi Yan was finally awakened, completely awakened. Finally, he knew why before Bloodthirsty lost his life and why his last words were to ask Xian He, Xian Shan, and Lao Luo to find the successors in another universe. It was because only the souls from other universes could ignore the principles and rules of fate in this universe. They could break the cage without fearing for Desolate's terrifying ability to control people's lives. Chapter 1353. The Sea Domain of Nihility. Chapter 1353. The Sea Domain of Nihility. After Tian Xie had finished, everybody sank into silence for a long time and immersed in absolute fear. Sitting on the crown on the main head of Hui, Ziyao observed people from her high level. She looked calm and relaxed, as if she had controlled everything in her hands. She let Tian Xie tell the others the truth to break their mind's defense. As long as they could recognize their sorrow, they wouldn't have the thought of depending on Desolate and this world. That was how she could subdue them and make them work for her. With those top experts, she could fulfill the secret operation she had planned for so many years. ___________ tame and fuse with Desolate. At this moment, everybody received a hard shock hitting their souls. They felt dizzy as they didn't know what to do to continue their lives. Things that had anchored them, like responsibility, war, slaughter, and protection, had become a hallucination. All the warriors here had lost their will to fight. They didn't know where they should do or return to. As long as you serve my mistress, not only she will ensure your safety, but she will also offer you a great opportunity. She will help you get rid of Desolate's confinement. You will be able to fly freely in the world. At this moment, Tian Xie's enticing voice guided them, which added to the intimidating aura from Ziyao. Some elders of the God clan with a weak will had nodded perplexedly. Oh, sorry, the great opportunity you said isn't attractive to me. Suddenly, Shi Yan snorted. His mind flickered to open the space, crack, connecting to Grace Mainland. The endless sea reappeared. So, you still want to be an imprisoned slave, sneered Tian Xie. Shi Yan pouted his lips and didn't care about him. He jumped into the space, slits abruptly. Perhaps everybody here was Desolate's prisoners, but not him. His soul wasn't created by Desolate. He was independent. Desolate couldn't control his fate. Also, he wasn't bound to any absolute beginning creature. Currently, he had just perceived the dark energy, a kind of power that could change something rotten to magic. As long as he had enough time to understand its subtle features, he could reach Bloodthirsty's level. At the same time, he could avoid Bloodthirsty's tragic fate. Why would he be subdued and become Ziyao's servant that acted as she pleased? Moreover, it wasn't the real Ziyao. It was Huey's soul. This space slit can remain for a while. She can't destroy it because I use the same kind of energy to create it. If you want to leave, you have to act fast. Shiryen turned around and smiled before he left. Audrey's beautiful face was moved. She didn't say anything and dashed forward at her max speed. She went after Shiryen, flashed, and disappeared into the space slit. At the same time, Xianhe, Adele, Frederick, Lady, and Azure Dragon weren't hesitant for a long time. They dashed forward rapidly, as they were hovering pretty close to Shiryen. Before the space slit closed, all of them with their profound realm had disappeared. Ziyao was sitting cross-legged on the imperial crown. Her beautiful eyes squinted as she had a gleam of teasing. It seemed like she had already calculated it. Before the space slit closed, a strange energy shook it and deviated it. Before it disappeared, its direction and destination changed. Mistress. Tianxia frowned and asked for Ziyao's direction. Ziyao's face didn't change. They can't return to Desolate's incipient extent. Shiryen and that little girl have fused with the origins of Desolate's clones. As long as they can't come back, Desolate can awaken. It's good for us then. Then she looked at the members of the God clan, the 4 heavenly kings, the chiefs of the 12 families, and the elders. Follow me, or I'll destroy you. Choose one for yourself. The God clan's warriors were filled with fear. It was a misty place without skies or the earth. The remains of broken stars, fragments of the asteroids, were floating. The holes in the void flashed and moved strangely, like a monster's mouth, ready to devour the victims. A desolate, cold, and barren aura filled every corner of the place. Further from there, the broken pieces of the stars and dregs floated like sawdust in the immensely vast sea. An unknown chill multiplied in Shiryan's heart. He was standing on a massive, dark red rock. Looking at the further area, he was horror-struck. Of course, it wasn't Grace Mainland. When Shiryen stepped into the space slit, he understood that something went wrong. He realized that an energy had shaken space and affected his teleport. He didn't know where he was. He released his soul consciousness and found that he couldn't reach the end of this place. It was like a small boat floating in the most remote area of an endless sea. He couldn't find commotion of living beings. Crack! All of a sudden, a crunchy noise arose together with slight breathing on a diamond-like rock next to him. Shiryen was surprised. His body flashed, and he landed on a giant, rough diamond. He looked at Audrey and asked in surprise, "Why are you here?" Audrey looked a little helter-skelter. Her green dress was torn, revealing her white jade, glowing thighs that gave people a lot of thoughts. As she heard Shiryan's voice, she calmed down and spoke immediately. "It's the first time I came to Grace Mainland. This place is strange to me." While talking, she slowly rose up, her eyes cold and clear. She curiously observed her surrounding. Shortly after, she became odd. "This place isn't Grace Mainland," Shiryen forced a smile. "While we teleported, Ziyao had affected the space slit. I don't know where we are now. What surprises me the most is that I can't connect to Grace Mainland. I can't find the way back." After he had got here, he had tried to connect to the origin of Grace Mainland. Unfortunately, his soul consciousness was like a rock sinking into a sea with no echo. This never happened before. In that cosmos, as soon as his thought flickered, he could connect to Grace Mainland's origin no matter where he was. Even if when he was in the chaotic space basin, he could connect to Grace Mainland quickly and return there in just a blink of an eye. However, in this area, his connection with Grace Mainland was cut off. He couldn't catch any signal or connection. Of course, this area isn't Grace Mainland. It's the sea domain of nihility. Audrey's pretty face was fearful. Shiryen was shaken hard. He grimaced. This place is the sea domain of nihility. Audrey forced a smile. I've never been here before, but I heard about it from my mother. This place is sea domain of nihility. It's the most mysterious area in the world. If Tianxia's correct that the universe we're dwelling in is just desolate's incipient extent, the sea domain of nihility has escaped from desolate. Of course, you can't contact Grace mainland now. Shiryan understood it now. Previously, he could return to Grace mainland within a moment because he was in the cosmos that Desolate had created. The turbulent space current didn't belong to Desolate, but it had a magical connection with Desolate. They had many passages between each other. That was why he could travel at ease. However, this sea domain of nihility didn't have a bit related to Desolate's incipient extent. In this area, it was just a dream if he wanted to come back to Desolate's incipient extent. Only you got here. Shiryan contemplated for a while and then asked, It seems that Xian He and the others also followed me, but I'm not sure if they got into the space crack or not. Even if they did, I'm afraid that they will be scattered around the sea domain of nihility. I think they couldn't return to our familiar world. Shiryan looked bitter. He scanned the immense space that he didn't belong to and said, How can we go back? God knows, Audrey shook her head. Pausing for a while, she suddenly looked astounded. Shiryan, that Huey's clone is close to you, right? Of course I'm close to her. She is, Shiryan answered instinctively, but he paused unnaturally and gave a dry smile. She's a close friend of mine. I could never have imagined that she was the soul of Hui. It's true that we can't predict anything. Oh. Well, she's not only a close friend, isn't she? Audrey looked as if she understood everything. Her face was natural, but the corners of her mouth jerked as if she was teasing him. As long as they are pretty girls, they will have some relationship with you. I think it's a little ambiguous. After I'd returned to Imperial Dark Tribe, I've investigated you. You're that sort of person, she confirmed. Shiryan felt ridiculous, his eyes odd. Were you too free when you got crazy? Why did you need to investigate me? Oh. Well, it was because you're the new master of bloodthirsty force, Audrey pouted her lips. Sure, Yen didn't talk more. He concentrated on observing the surroundings. He found that the furious energy filled the place. The broken stars, the remains of the asteroids, and the pieces of things that he couldn't name weren't still. From time to time, they moved as the sea domain moved, and with the changes of the spatial holes in the void. Not far from them was a sparkling stone that released a scorching heat and waves of terrifying energy. He sensed it for a while, and his eyes brightened. He immediately dashed toward that stone. Audrey was surprised. She furrowed her brows and followed him. There was a scarlet stone inlaid inside a crack of a burning red rock. It was as big as a fist, but the energy fluctuations and the waves of fire seething from there were so formidable. It's the nucleus of the sun. Although it's just fist-sized, it's priceless. To the people cultivating fire power Upanishad, it's really helpful, said Audrey with bright eyes. Inside the sea domain of nihility, it's really magical. I heard that only immortal realm experts could survive this place. We haven't reached the immortal realm yet, and your realm is even lower than mine. How are we still safe and sound here? Shiryan was skeptical. Perhaps we haven't reached the dangerous areas yet. I guess we're at the outermost area of the sea domain of nihility, said Audrey faintly. It should be because we're fused with the origin. Shiryan had another thought. He rose one hand to grab that solar nucleus, then spurted a gold flame. The flame surrounded the nucleus and refined it. Gradually, the scarlet stone was melted into drops of fire. I used to hear from my mother that the sea domain of nihility has a lot of fragments of the powerful divine weapons. They are much stronger than the secret treasures that we know. There are many things we can't even name. They remain here after the break of the star areas from long, long time ago. Seeing him melting down the solar nucleus, she looked surprised, mumbling. I believe so. Spark got a piece of celestial ice jade flake around this place. He had refined it to be his life treasure with formidable powers. Zi Yao took that flake. I think it could be the sharpest weapon, the absolute beginning era. I'm afraid this sea domain of nihility used to be the arena of the absolute beginning creatures. Shiyan looked pensive. Chapter 1354, The Long, Lonesome Days. Chapter 1354, The Long, Lonesome Days, _ The void was hazy with countless pieces of rocks and broken stars. Dangers hid everywhere and generated from time to time. The land here was endless and ever desolate. It was like a world that had been abandoned for billions of years. There was no aura or any streak of living beings. Shi Yan and Audrey were sitting on a rhombus piece of a broken lunar star. They looked at the endless void, their faces low-spirited. Shi Yan had refined this broken lunar star to make it a temporary battleship. Using his god power, it moved fast like a meteor shooting across the sea domain of nihility. With the current speed of this lunar star, it could travel through a star area that was more than 1 billion miles in a day. However, they didn't know how long they had been riding on this piece of rock. They got no harvest along the way, anyway. They had encountered nothing precious or any creature. It seemed like only the two of them existed in this immensely vast and borderless sea domain of nihility. The lonely, isolated feelings gradually churned in their hearts. They thought that they would never see hope or the other end of this place. In the beginning, the two still talked and encouraged each other every day. Then, they reduced the talking as they saw the dispirited gleam in each other's eyes. This place had thin earth and heaven energy that they could use to cultivate. However, it was weak, so it was really difficult to use the energy here to advance their cultivation further. One day, Audrey's cold eyes slightly brightened. She still wore a green dress, and her beautiful face didn't have a speck of dust. A faint halo protected her sexy body. How long has it been? She mumbled as if she was talking to herself. Shi Yan opened his closed eyes as he heard her, his face bitter and astringent. There's no sun, moon, or stars. We don't have the concept of time here. I don't know how long it has been, but I think it should have been more than a while. Before we got here, my third sky of incipient god realm hasn't steadied, but now I'm good. I wonder what is going on in our world. Had we destroyed our world? I don't know where my mother teleported to. If she was here, why haven't we met yet? Audrey hadn't talked to Shi Yan for a while, and now, when she began talking, it seemed like she couldn't stop. Sigh, if I'd known we would be delivered here. You staying back, there wouldn't have been a bad choice, maybe. Shi Yan was surprised. If you stayed there, perhaps you wouldn't be killed, but your soul would have a soul seal that doesn't belong to you. You want to be its puppet? Audrey was low-spirited. She stooped and sighed. No matter what, she was still very mesmerizing. According to you, the experts at the immortal realm used to come here to train themselves. How could they get in? And how do we get out of here? Asked Shi Yan with a frown. Although my mother is an expert at the immortal realm, she's also the matriarch, so she had to manage the tribe. She hasn't had a chance to visit the sea domain of nihility yet. She told me that those immortal realm experts had come to the end of our world and crossed a strange river to get to this place. Audrey furrowed her brows and remembered her mother's words. She explained, "The warriors coming here from our world have a special compass which navigates our world. That's how they can save themselves from getting lost and end up finding the way home." Shi Yan gave a bitter smile. It's tragic that we don't know the direction. We don't know where our world is. We're like headless flies, flying aimlessly. This area was misty, and they couldn't measure time or check the direction. They were left with endless loneliness and coldness. If a warrior got lost here, loneliness and isolation would nibble his or her heart. He would eventually lose his mind and sink into the eternal darkness. In this area, despair was someone's biggest enemy. If he couldn't defeat his despair, his will was going to wear out. In a hopeless situation, he would think about negative results. Then he would fall into bewilderment and gradually get weaker until he consumed all of his vitality. It's strange. My mother said that this area is extremely perilous. Dangers are hidden everywhere. Why are we still safe and sound? Audrey was curious. Sure, Yen couldn't explain this. Elder Spark of the God Clan had visited the sea domain of Nihility, but had just surveyed the outskirts of the sea domain. He got the celestial ice jade flake there. According to him, the sea domain was extremely dangerous. Except for real experts at the immortal realm, the others could hardly survive. However, during this time, besides the isolation, loneliness, and coldness, Yen and Audrey hadn't actually faced any danger that could make them perish. This filled their hearts with doubts. Is it really the sea domain of Nihility? Could we be wrong? Yen sounded astounded. No, we can't be wrong. Audrey confirmed. See, pieces of broken stars, dregs of the asteroids, the void caves, and turbulent energy. They are the features of the sea domain of Nihility. I guess it's because of our location that we haven't encountered any danger. Maybe we're in a very special area in the sea domain. Which place? Yen was surprised. I don't know, but I've heard from my mother that the sea domain of Nihility still has some relatively safe areas that the experts could rest in for a short time to adjust their conditions. Anyway, she also said that there wouldn't be anything to harvest in those areas. The precious items wouldn't appear there, explained Audrey. Why is that? Asked Yen. She said that there's so many immortal realm experts have visited the sea domain of Nihility to explore. They had finished searching for precious items in the safe zones a long time ago. Nothing was left. Only the areas with a lot of death traps could have treasures that they haven't discovered yet, answered Audrey in a low-pitched voice. Suddenly she got up. Her creamy, straight legs were so attractive. Her pair of clear and deep eyes zoomed over to the further area. She sighed. Tianxia said that we've been living in desolate's incipient extent. That world isn't a real universe. I think the creatures from a real universe used to come to this area, but because it's unimaginably vast, it's hard to meet them. She turned her head to look at Yen and contemplated. The precursors of Imperial Dark Tribe used to meet the aliens in the sea domain of Nihility. They belonged in a real universe. It's a secret in our tribe. It's not to be told to the others, but we're in a special circumstance. It's okay if I tell you now. The creatures from a real universe, were they absolute beginning creatures? Yen was astonished. I don't think so. Audrey shook her head. According to the records from our precursors, although they looked strange, they weren't as giant as the absolute beginning creatures. My precursor couldn't communicate with them. They met and then parted shortly after that. My precursor guessed that they were really strong and not weaker than him. At that time, he was at second sky of immortal realm. Yen kept silent. He got the truth for a long time ago. He knew that the world he had dwelled in was just desolate's incipient extent. It was the world that Desolate had created. It wasn't a real universe. The sea domain of Nihility had gotten rid of Desolate. Thus, it wasn't strange if other creatures could come here. In this immense sea of stars, if the absolute beginning creatures like Desolate, Devour, or we could exist, there were other living beings. Perhaps they weren't as powerful as absolute beginning creatures, but they were clearly strong. Theoretically, it wasn't strange if the precursor of the Imperial Dark Tribe could encounter some aliens in the sea domain of Nihility. It was just that they were wandering in an extremely vast area, and they couldn't meet any strange creature. As thoughts crossed his mind, Yen kept quiet for a long time and then said, "We can't stay idle like this. Perhaps we should seek the dangerous areas proactively. We can find the precious treasure in the place that could threaten our lives." We could even see the other creatures. If they stayed in this safe zone, even if they could rest for 100 years, they wouldn't find the way home. If they couldn't meet any other creature to learn about this area, they were never going to escape this place. It's a good idea, but we don't even know where the dangerous areas are. Even if we want to go there, we have to find a suitable area, said Audrey begrudgingly. If you had told me we could have a bigger chance if we entered the dangerous areas, we would have gone there a long time ago. While riding the meteor, I could feel that some places were very dangerous. I tried to avoid those areas. When they were moving, Shi Yan had released his soul consciousness to sense around. He recognized many areas with the terrifying energy fluctuations. The auras of those areas made him feel his life was threatened. Thus, he didn't notify Audrey and avoided to ensure his own safety. And now, listening to Audrey's explanation, he finally knew that they must take risks to find the right direction. They had to proactively jump into those death traps. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Audrey rebuked and blamed him for wasting their time. You couldn't endure the dangers there. I just wanted to keep you safe. Shi Yan gave her a forced smile. You're at first sky of incipient God realm. I'm sure you can't survive the lands I've sensed. Let alone Audrey. Even Shi Yan knew those areas were unpredictably dangerous, that he couldn't be sure about his own safety. Thus, he didn't tell Audrey. You disdain me? Audrey's eyes turned cold. All right, we should keep going. When my soul consciousness spots the danger, we will get there. I hope you can perform your best and surprise me at that time. Shi Yan smiled relaxedly. Audrey snorted. Well, I'm one of the warriors with the origins. Even though my realm is low, I can protect myself. I won't depend on you. Nothing could be better than... Chapter 1355. The Asteroid Current. Chapter 1355. The Asteroid Current. Shi Yan opened his eyes while riding on the transparent piece of a broken lunar star and looking in a direction, his face stern. The chaotic energy waves came from that direction. World-destroying explosions boomed everywhere with space blades that tore the void. Shi Yan felt his soul shiver. Shi Yan was sure that the area his soul consciousness had sensed was filled with dangers. Audrey said that they could only meet the other creatures in perilous zones like that. Also, they could have a chance to get marvelous, precious materials or items in the sea domain of nihility. Did you find something? After the previous talk, Audrey had noticed Shi Yan's moves discreetly. Seeing his face turn stern, she wasn't frightened. She cheered up. A beautiful light glowed on her jade-like face. While she was mumbling, she stood up. Her creamy thighs moved, and she was like an agile green butterfly. This area was filled with the broken pieces of the planet, like a big speck of dust floating in outer space. From a very far area ahead of them, they could see the thick shower of brilliant meteors shooting toward an area where the chaotic energy congregated. The lightning struck like a giant, outraged dragon soaring up into the sky. The thunder rumbled and shook people's souls. The sharp blades were like scythes cutting the world. They could even cut massive pieces of broken stars, like cutting soft tofu. Those sharp blades were space blade famous for its swift and fierce nature. Although they weren't made by any experts with space power Upanishad, they were much keener than a blade that De Carlos could create with his best ability. Shi Yan had no doubt that those blades could dismember the experts at the immortal realm easily. That area! He wore a heavy face and pointed at the area where the shooting stars were congregating. He discreetly urged his energy and then turned to Audrey. Are you ready? Audrey's beautiful eyes gazed at the place. She looked surprised and frightened. Pondering for a while, she nodded resolutely. I'm ready. Shi Yan didn't say more. The rhombus lunar star underneath them turned into a cold and clear moonlight and accelerated toward that dangerous area. Audrey's breathing became short. Her milky breasts thrust out and radiant light filled her eyes. Flows of chaotic, fierce energy shot like sparks or like millions of fireflies. Those remnants of energy were visible and were shooting sharply like a fierce shower of steel needles. In the beginning, she didn't use the god power to create a protective, light cage. She acted as if she was mad at Shiryen, so she tried to be bold and use her body to resist the energy. Thus, the sparks shot over and destroyed her tight dress, creating fingernail-sized holes and revealing lots of her white, mesmerizing skin. When they came near, Audrey found that those shooting meteors were actually giant asteroids. Those cosmic rocks had so many colors. Some are garnet, some are orange-red, and some even looked like diamonds. They existed in various shapes, though. Those asteroids didn't come from the area they were in, but from another direction that was misty gray with billions of floating asteroids like a sea. At this moment, those asteroids seemed to be activated and given life. They moved, grouped, and shot toward them. It looked like some unknown force was controlling them and making them fly fast toward the dark area. There were millions of them. While they were flying, they collided and exploded. The shock waves of those explosions were enough to crush first sky of immortal realm experts. The sparks that hit Audrey were the shock waves of the asteroids' explosions. Although they were just shock waves, they were so sharp that they cut a lot of holes on her dress. Shiryen was standing with Audrey on the broken lunar star. They were still far away from those currents of asteroids. He turned around and looked at Audrey's new clothes with great interest. He grinned and arched his brows. "Well, your new dress looks really nice. I like it a lot. Don't change. Let me behold for a while. Haha." Many mysterious areas of Audrey's jade-like skin were exposed under the holes on her clothes. They made people lose their minds in them. Shiryen felt his passion rising high when he saw her perfect bosom, thighs, waists, and even her butt cheeks. His eyes became nakedly hot as he kept grinning evilly. "Go die." A dim, frosting flame flew out of her wet lips with her life aura. It immediately hit Shiryen's chest. The icy aura of the extremely cold heaven flame was like a bucket of ice water that poured on his passion and extinguished it. Even his hair turned into the sharp icicles. "You deserve that." Audrey looked cold. Her bright eyes showed that she was amused. Her agile body moved. Countless shadows of departed souls twirled around her body and shielded her from Shiryen's naked gaze. She spun 3 rounds at her spot. The departed souls around her vanished. When she reappeared, she wore a dark blue dress. The end of her brow twitched as she tried to press down her smile. "Well, did your flame of lust extinguish?" "Not yet." Shiryen didn't change his mind. As his soul flickered, the ice on his body melted. A cluster of icy flame bounced back to Audrey. She swallowed it. It was her origin's heaven flame. Boom! All of a sudden, the lunar rock underneath them accelerated. It didn't listen to Shiryen's control anymore and headed toward that dark area at a breakneck speed. Just like millions of rocks around them. Audrey was astounded. She didn't quarrel with Shiryen anymore and screamed. "It seems that some force is pulling those asteroids. We're affected too. We're attracted to that area. Don't try to be bold. Use the god power to create a protective barrier with many layers to cover your body." Shiryen's face was heavy and stern. He sat down on the rock and said, "Come to me. Being closer is better. The shock waves from the asteroid explosions are enough to crush your bones. You should be careful." As soon as he finished, 2 giant asteroids collided around 10,000 meters away from them. The energy from that collision boomed like nuclear warheads impacting. The shock waves seemed to distort even the void and created a chain reaction. The floating rocks near them also exploded. The shock waves didn't cease and headed toward Shiryen and Audrey. Audrey wanted to snap back 1 or 2 sentences, but then she felt the formidable shock waves. Her exquisite face turned cold immediately. She zoomed toward Shi Yen like lightning and sat next to him. The emerald light cages swayed and covered her body when her god power was urged. As the princess of Imperial Dark Tribe, she had mastered the special soul power Upanishad of Imperial Dark Tribe. Her sensibility was sharp, and she always had a clear grasp of the attacking power. She understood that the coming shockwaves could harm her body. Thus, she was resolute and didn't say a word. She decided to move to Shi Yen to seek protection. Star Shield. Shi Yen screamed, and 10 starlight beams shot out of his hands. Those starlight bands were like ropes coiling around the surrounding asteroids and pulling them toward the two to create a rock wall. The asteroid wall shook several times and then subsided. Shi Yen retreated his energy. The asteroids dispersed and then continued to flow forward. Audrey looked astonished as she said, "There's a wisp of a feeble soul inside the rock over there. It's not a creature. I think it's the broken piece of some divine weapon." She looked at an asteroid in front of them. The asteroid was as big as a small life star. It had an unusual octagonal shape with dark brown colors. It looked like a massive plate. Some short grass grew on its surface, which made it unusual compared to the other barren asteroids around. "Let's take a look." Sure, Yin pulled himself together to observe. He was surprised. Then he urged the lunar rock they were riding on and doubled its speed. They glided through many asteroids around and headed toward the strange rock Audrey had seen. 15 minutes later, rumble. The lunar rock landed on that dark brown asteroid. Sure, Yen swiftly landed on the surface of the rock. His mind flickered and sent the soul consciousness that could worm into every corner to all the small cracks on the surface of the asteroid. After a while, he was bewildered. A strange light shot out from his eyes. Audrey suddenly appeared next to him, her brows arching. She stepped toward a place. "The place I've sensed is over there." Sure, Yen didn't speak. He looked pensive and followed her like her shadow. This dark brown asteroid had a lot of a strange kind of weed. The grass was around 1/2 meter tall, and it was as sharp as the saw with a tough vitality. This kind of peculiar, deep green grass filled every corner of the asteroid. At first glance, it was like a green carpet. While the asteroid was flying, the tufts of grass swayed gently like waving hands. They looked so strange indeed. Immediately, Audrey's beautiful legs stopped moving. She bent her body to look at a dark hole on the surface of the asteroid. The hole was big enough for one person to jump into. It was so dark that she couldn't see anything. All she could do was hear the wind howling ear-piercingly. "That feeble soul is right in the cave. I'm going there to check." Audrey turned around and looked at Shi Yen to ask for his opinion. "Hold on." Shi Yen frowned and said, "It doesn't feel right. I don't know why I got a terrible feeling as soon as I landed. I've just used my soul consciousness to cover the entire asteroid. I found that this asteroid has only that cave. Also, it allows only one person to get in at a time." "What do you mean?" Audrey didn't get his idea. "Use your soul consciousness to check this area carefully. Can you feel that it's like a soul filament spreading everywhere?" "Sure," Yen mumbled. "Soul filament spreading?" Audrey was surprised. She pulled herself together to sense. She vaguely felt something wrong, but she couldn't tell what was wrong. "Green grass. That's the green grass here." Shi Yen discolored and screamed. Even though the green grass could be tougher, it couldn't survive here. The tufts of grass we see on this asteroid is the soul filaments. They are the feeble soul filaments. The soul fluctuation you've sensed should come from these things. Not true. The soul fluctuation comes from this cave. Audrey shook her head. It appeared as soon as we landed on this rock. The soul fluctuation comes from the cave after that. "Perhaps it's trying to lure you and me to the cave," said Shi Yen skeptically. "Could it be like that?" Audrey felt funny. She thought that Shi Yan was overthinking it. She thought that it was impossible that something could trap them in this desolate sea domain of nihility. We should test it first. Shi Yan looked gingerly. Chapter 1356. Using Blood to Create the Body. Chapter 1356. Using Blood to Create the Body. Shi Yan and Audrey stood by the cave and concentrated on the dark entrance of the cave. They felt a strange chill filling their hearts. Audrey calmed down. A tender light glowed on her face. Her soul altar was like a mirror without a speck of dust. As she had reached incipient God realm and fused with the heaven flames of God-blessed mainland's origin, she was definitely stronger than many people. When she focused on sensing, she could see that something was wrong. You're cautious indeed, Audrey said to him, her eyes surprised. You're right. That kind of green grass is everywhere, and they have feeble soul fluctuations. I told you that we should check it first, Shi Yan talked seriously. How do I check it? Audrey quietly stepped back and stayed away from the cave. She could feel a little safer as she had stayed away from the danger. Simple. Shi Yan rose one hand. A small cut appeared on his left hand, and a drop of beautiful ruby blood oozed out. That drop of blood released red halos as it contained thick life energy fluctuations. Swoosh! The drop of blood burned and emitted wise of blood chi like the spider web. It was like a great artist using a brush and sketching Shi Yan's drawing in the middle of the air. Shortly after, the life energy in the drop triggered and surged. Shi Yan's model soon had bones, flesh, and veins. Within 2 minutes, another version of him was condensed right in front of Audrey. It was another Shi Yan who stood naked and showcased his lean and vigorous body. Although his eyes were sparkling, there was no surging life aura in his body or soul fluctuation that could frighten people. Rumor said that when the immortal demon warriors had reached a specific, profound level, even if their bodies were smashed, as long as they still had a drop of blood left, they could still resurrect themselves. Audrey deemed that it was untrue and that people were just exaggerating. But now she saw it with her own eyes. The strange light rippled through her beautiful eyes as she admired Shi Yan's magical ability. Does it mean that you have an immortal body? Even if you were smashed, you could use the blood to revive. She thought that it was really miraculous. Shi Yan didn't answer. He looked pensive when he studied his other body, which was made of a drop of his blood. According to Blood Devil and Xian He, Profound Realm immortal demon experts could use the life power Upanishad to transform the blood into their own bodies. There were many rumors about the immortal demon clan, and how they used the blood to resurrect was always the favorite topic. In fact, people thought that the rumors were just exaggerated. Even for the experts of the immortal demon clan at a high level like Xian He, the body created from a drop of his blood couldn't have even one bit of the real body's strength. Anyway, the rumors said that using blood to resurrect was somehow correct. If Xian He's body was broken, as long as he still had the immortal demon blood, he could use it to grow his body and send his soul altar inside to make his body as strong as a dragon. The blood of the immortal demon clansmen was the core of life. If their blood wasn't destroyed, they could still regrow their body. Of course, after they had lost their real body, the body that they created quickly couldn't be as strong as they used to be. They needed a lot of time to gather the energy to refine the body. That was how they used the seal inside their blood to resume their original power. This procedure could take up to hundreds or even several thousand years. It wasn't as easy as people had rumored. At this moment, Shi Yan gathered his spirit to look at the clone he had just made with one drop of blood, his expression complicated. He hadn't sent any wisp of soul consciousness in it. It was merely a flesh puppet, and its body strength was as tough as a warrior at true God realm. If his true body was destroyed, he could place his soul altar into the clone, and it would take dozens of years to recover. It wasn't what made him silent. While he was using a drop of blood to create the clone, he had a strange feeling as if he was creating a new creature. If he wanted to do that, he could cut off the connection with a wisp of soul consciousness and put it into a clone. Also, that clone would become a new creature. Could it be a whole new individual? Would it be an independent creature? Shiryan knew that at his realm he couldn't do that. However, he came to think of a possibility. Desolate had used the same method to make its clone create the 4 great creatures. The clones had created the 4 great creatures, and Desolate had used the blood of the precursors from the 4 races to create Bloodthirsty. It was creating creatures. How could Desolate do that? It was easy to create the flesh container, but how did Desolate create the soul? Shiryan frowned and sank into his exploration of Life Power Upanishad. He was trying to reason the details when Desolate created the creatures. However, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get through the challenge of creating the soul of a new creature. He understood that he was still pretty far away from that miraculous level. However, he understood deeply that one day he could break that mystery and he could actually create creatures and even new races. Thus, his galaxy-like, incipient extent was going to be more lively. It would become like Desolate's world with so many races and special, marvelous creatures. Creating the galaxy and species. How great would that career be? How miraculous would that be? Shiryan became passionate. He felt his soul rising as he had a motivation to head towards the future. This kind of changes in his soul and attitude had opened his mind and gave him fearless thoughts. I made the body. You should give a wisp of a departed soul. We will make him go to the cave, he beamed at Audrey. He knew Audrey cultivated a unique soul technique from the Soul Power Upanishad of Imperial Dark Tribe. She could tie the departed souls in her soul altar to refine her soul altar and make them the strange soul consciousness dwelling in her sea of consciousness. She had some marvelous power indeed. There was a special area in Audrey's soul altar she used as a prison to the departed souls or the demons, making them her soul consciousness tentacles. The more departed souls, demons or creatures with the soul form, the better her power Upanishad and her realm became. It was also a special feature of Imperial Dark Tribe's power Upanishad. Indeed, Audrey didn't think much. She pointed her finger, and a feeble soul flew out, falling into the head of Shiryan's clone made of his blood. Shortly after, Shiryan and Audrey felt a slight shock. They faced each other, and divine light shot out of their eyes. A marvelous feeling quietly reflected in their hearts. The body made of Shiryan's blood now had a soul Audrey that had tamed. She added a wisp of her soul power. That man with Shiryan's blood and Audrey's soul was like an invisible rope that connected the two of them. Through him, Shiryan could vaguely see the changes of Audrey's mind. Audrey could recognize the subtle changes at the bottom of his heart. It was an unimaginable connection that they couldn't describe with words. He's like our son. Shiryan was bewildered for a while before teasing Audrey. Audrey blushed and her cheeks reddened. However, her beautiful eyes were brilliant with light. She glared at Shiryan and said awkwardly, "Don't say such rubbish." At this moment, her eyes were like clouds at a sunset. She looked so gorgeous, like a blooming flower. She made people's hearts beat frantically. Shiryan became baffled. He looked at her for a while and then appraised. "You're really beautiful. It's just that you wear that cold face every day. You don't want people to come near you. You've been hiding your most beautiful features. It's not good, you know. Can you just put your effort into the business?" Audrey continuously took many deep breaths. Her ample breasts thrust in and out. Her moods changed as she was trying to suppress the desire to hit Shiryan hard. Shiryan smiled relaxedly and said, "You're the one who should take action. You've tamed that soul, and it got your soul seal. You can control it, right? Audrey harumphed and pulled the hair on her temple. I'm so pissed off. Then she used her power Upanishad and pointed at the cave. The puppet made of Sher Yan's blood drilled deep into the cave. It didn't stop after 15 minutes and moved further. It seems pretty deep, frowned Sher Yan. Audrey didn't mind him. The charming gleam on her face disappeared. She looked cold and grave. The soul energy fluctuated strangely on her as she was focusing on sensing the changes in the hole. She could sense the tiny commotions inside the cave through that departed soul to see if there was any danger deep down there. Suddenly, Audrey looked shaken. Her soul altar shivered as she paled. Her beautiful eyes emitted marvelous light. She gritted her teeth and hissed, "You're right. Something really strange is in that cave. I couldn't connect to my departed soul and my soul consciousness in it." What happened? Sher Yan's eyes brightened. It seems to be cut off forcefully. Perhaps it was refined or destroyed. I can't tell what happened. Do you feel anything from the body you'd used your blood to create? She asked. It turns into ashes. Sher Yan darkened his face. I can't sense anything. It doesn't exist anymore. I can't feel it, which means it has gone completely. You're right. Something strange is over there. This place isn't safe at all, Audrey was convinced. Then we should use another advanced method to see what strange thing is inside this meteorite. Sher Yan snorted and then continued. Dare to swallow a drop of my blood, it should pay with the equal price. Whatever it is, it should pay. Then sharp blades like shining wind blades shot out from his eyes. A magical energy, fluctuation that could distort the void expanded from him. The surrounding space sizzled. The noises became louder gradually. In the beginning, Audrey didn't understand. Then she looked around before covering her mouth and screamed in panic. She saw that the massive sharp space blades floating near them were attracted by Sher Yan's energy. They came with the momentum of something space-breaking. Chapter 1357. A Three-Legged Jade Cauldron. Chapter 1357. A Three-Legged Jade Cauldron. A sharp blade saber, like a 1,000-meter-long lightning bolt, appeared with a momentum that could mince the entire planet. Audrey had thought that countless pieces of broken stars and flows of meteorites in the sea domain of nihility were caused by those dragon-like space scythes. At this moment, those terrifying space sabers were drawn by Sher Yan's power Upanishad. They came with the most intimidating aura. Along their way, they had scythed dozens of giant rocks. The rocks exploded and sent pieces of rock chips everywhere. Seeing a massive blade coming, Audrey was numb. She hurried to use the power Upanishad and create layers of barriers to protect her body. She was ready to counter. Crack! Crack! The giant blade slashed the surface of the asteroid they were riding. The hard surface sparked and sent so many rocks into the air. A tremendous shock came. Audrey's soft body shook violently like a small boat under a harsh thunderstorm. She felt so horrible and swayed as if she was about to collapse. Strangely, the massive asteroid spun after the impact, as the space blade couldn't cut it through. However, many rocks on the surface shattered. Oh, it's really strange, though. Sure, Yen cried as he was surprised. Then he continued to drive more space sabers. 5 more large blades came and clashed on the asteroid. It looked like someone trying to ignite the rock. The sparks appeared clearly while the dish-shaped asteroid was spinning around. Crack! 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 So many ash-brown rocks of various sizes fell off the asteroid. They were destroyed shortly after. The asteroid trembled, but it was so powerful. It collided with the other rocks around, smashing them or sending chips of rocks everywhere. The asteroid itself was safe. It was intact, and it was unbelievably rigid. The sharp space sabers were the sharpest attack in the world. It could have the planet or destroy the life star quickly. Even the body of the immortal realm experts couldn't endure one slash. It was tough to resist such an attack. Anyway, this massive asteroid had just spun or trembled under several attacks. It wasn't destroyed yet. As the asteroid spun, Audrey became dizzy and turned pale. When the rocks collided and the tremors arose, the sparks and the rock chips damaged her too. The light cage protection she had made with her first sky of incipient god realm cultivation base flashed constantly. It looked like her protection was about to vanish. At this moment, Yen stopped guiding the space sabers. He rose one arm and directly pulled Audrey into his embrace, holding her cold body in his chest. The warm, masculine smell flooded Audrey's heart. She was dizzy and her eyes were puzzled. Just like a drowning victim who instinctively grabbed anything she could, she clutched and squeezed Yan's arm. While she hadn't recognized, her body leaned against his. Her generous breasts were placed on his broad chest. The asteroid was still spinning. The two rolled and felt like the sky turned upside down. The energy attacked the surface and made the rocks roll and fall off the asteroid. Yen held Audrey with one arm and her wonderful body fell while his other hand gathered and released a river of starlight, using a special method to balance and adjust the trajectory of the asteroid. This kept it from colliding or moving into the area with constant explosions. In front of them, dozens of meteorites were colliding and created earth-shaking explosions that sent formidable shockwaves. Together, they created an area that could destroy everything. He knew if their asteroid fell into that area, he and the princess of Imperial Dark Tribe in his chest would perish quickly. No one could save them. After a long time, the asteroid subsided. The lunar rock they had gotten rid of had fallen off while they didn't recognize it was happening. The asteroid beneath them became normal. However, it was still pulled by some mysterious force, moving quickly towards a dark area. Oops! He pulled himself together to observe the ground. He couldn't help but cry in surprise. His face became odd. Audrey got herself together. She was about to scold him for his rash actions, but his cry had affected her. She also looked at the ground, immediately her bright eyes lighting up. What is this thing? She seemed to lose her usual calmness. Her soft body shook. The asteroid under their feet was now like a beautiful jade, something that had just shaken off the bark. It was now emerald green. The thing that had just been revealed was like some sort of precious jade they couldn't name. It glowed in a deep green halo. The green grass on the surface of the asteroid was now some kind of archaic tadpole language. The drawings looked like tadpoles swimming around underneath them. The symbols glowed in a glossy emerald green light and moved around as if they were unceasingly creating something magical. It seems like we need to peel off more rock. The rock surface is just a cover, I guess. Yan's eyes brightened as he grinned. He moved the strange asteroid around and used the bloody sword to smash the rock sticking on the jade surface with the bloodlight. The sea domain of nihility had many mysterious things. As Xian, he, Ming Hao, and the 4 heavenly kings had chosen this area to cultivate, it meant some marvels here had attracted them. Spark had collected just a piece of a broken divine weapon in the outskirt. After he had refined that celestial ice jade flake, his competence increased massively. It indirectly provided evidence that showed how wonderful this place could be. It used to be a strange rock before the space sabers had peeled off the rock surface. Unexpectedly, the thing underneath the rock layer was so magnificent. Sure, Yen felt his heart beat faster. He could confirm that this massive jade was the reason why the sharp space saber couldn't cut through the asteroid. As it survived the sharp space sabers and it had unknown tadpole symbols, this thing was likely a formidable secret treasure. Audrey didn't move rashly. She just looked at the thing under her feet and went absent-minded. She looked passionate when she mumbled, "This rock is so beautiful." Shortly after, all the rocks sticking on the surface of the asteroid peeled off. The thing under the rock layer was revealed, and it glowed in a mesmerizing green light. Unexpectedly, it was a giant three-legged jade cauldron. This massive jade cauldron was at least several times bigger than the Immortal Island. It was beautifully green, and the surface of the cauldron was filled with tadpole symbols. It seemed like those symbols were lush tufts of grass they had seen. The cauldron's mouth was deep and eccentric with a cold and dark aura. It was like the mouth of an icy beast that was ready to swallow people. The three-legged jade cauldron was placed inclined. Shiryen and Audrey were standing on the body of the cauldron. They observed and complimented it. The cave we saw must lead to the mouth of the cauldron. My departed soul and the wisp of my soul consciousness seem to be refined. I can feel that they are now just a normal tadpole symbol on the surface of this jade cauldron. Audrey rubbed her smooth forehead and looked astounded. Shiryen knew why she looked like that. This three-legged jade cauldron was so massive, while each of the symbols on its surface was just as big as a fingernail. If Audrey wasn't wrong that one of her departed soul and a wisp of her soul consciousness had been absorbed by the three-legged jade cauldron, and they had turned into just a small symbol on the cauldron, had the billions of tadpole symbols on this cauldron been created the same way? How many creatures' lives had it taken? Sure, Yen could feel his hair rising on his nape. With a stern face, he looked at the dark mouth of the green cauldron, crying in a low-pitched voice, "Don't get close to the cauldron's mouth." Audrey was chilled while she was walking toward the cauldron's mouth. She reacted timely, halting by the place and asking, "If it can draw the creatures into it, it should have a tool spirit. Should we find a way to communicate with it? If we can't find any other living being here, we can try this." Communicate with it? Shiryen wore a sour face. Even if it has a tool spirit, this thing can refine the soul. When you release a wisp of your soul consciousness, it will happen as you've said. It will become a tadpole symbol. Perhaps you could try to check it out. Fine, Audrey didn't believe him. She had many detached souls in her brain. As her mind flickered, she released a feeble soul. Without attaching her soul consciousness to it, she used her power to make the soul a wisp of soul fluctuation to ask for information. Then, she sent the soul to the cauldron's mouth directly. Then nothing happened. No commotion arose from the three-legged cauldron. The detached soul she had released disappeared like a rock sinking into a seabed. Nothing echoed. "It seems like this tool spirit isn't friendly at all," snorted Audrey. Shortly after, the tadpole symbols on the surface of the jade cauldron became like a twisted green lightning. They created a strange but marvelous entry fluctuation. Many fragments of the asteroids around seemed attracted to some magnetic field. They swarmed over and magically stuck on the surface of the jade cauldron. After 1 hour, the three-legged jade cauldron was covered with rocks again. It had resumed its original appearance before the sharp space sabers had peeled it off. However, it didn't have green grass or a cave this time. Shiryen and Audrey watched the whole thing. They felt so begrudging as they didn't know where and how to destroy this jade cauldron or what they should do to connect to the tool spirit. If there was a tool spirit, how is your fusion with the heaven flames? How many heaven flames does your God-blessed mainland's origin have? How many flames that still need to fuse with each other? Shiryen rubbed his chin and asked something. It seemed not that relevant. Our ancestral star has 7 heaven flames. 3 of them have fused together, and the other 4 have also fused. I'm in the final stage of heaven flame fusion. However, it's really hard to fuse them all completely. I haven't found a way to make progress. I think I'm going to give it up, said Audrey. Should we use the flaming origin to check if we can make this 3-legged jade cauldron change? Shiryen suggested. Would it work? Audrey was surprised. I don't know. But just like what you've said, we should try. Shiryen shrugged begrudgingly. If it works, we can know the magical features of the Jade Cauldron. We can discover it. Okay, let's try. Audrey nodded in agreement. Chapter 1358. The Absolute Beginning Symbols. Chapter 1358. The Absolute Beginning Symbols. Inside the rapid asteroid current, the asteroids moved like lightning strikes. They often collided, resulting in a lot of beautiful sparks and fire. Several thousand asteroids flowed, like a river heading to the vast sea. They moved very fast towards a specific direction. This area didn't have a sun, moon, or the concept of time. It had only loneliness, a low temperature, desolation, and danger. Sure, Yin used space blades to destroy the rock layer underneath. He cleaned the rock, sticking on the Jade Cauldron one more time. The deep green Jade Cauldron was exposed. The fingernail-sized tadpole symbols were swimming around the surface and the body of the cauldron as if they were real living things. The mouth of the cauldron was emitting a dim light, hiding mysterious, terrifying secrets. Shiryen and Audrey parted. They stood opposite to each other on the three-legged Jade Cauldron. Flames burned fiercely on their bodies. Countless clusters of flame expanded and streamed. The flames on their bodies had different colors, including orange-red, dark red, icy blue, and bright yellow. Their auras were also different. The flames were fiery, dark, and sinister. Some flames sparked with lightning, and some flames carried a fierce wind. The heaven flames had different attributes. Particularly, Shiryan's heaven flames had the soul, lighting electric, icy, Taepyong powers, and even the corpse chi auras. Audrey's flames were the same. After fusing, her 7 heaven flames became only 2. Her 2 origins flames had a similar aura as Shiryan's. They could switch the auras easily. Currently, their heaven flames with different auras and colors had all turned to the top heating, yang ones. The heaven flames were like a carpet that slowly covered the surface of the three-legged Jade Cauldron. They were trying to use the scorching, Taepyong heaven flames to refine this massive cauldron. Sure, Yin suddenly got a magical feeling. The clusters of Sure Yan's heaven flame burned the Jade Cauldron. They directly contacted the aura of the tadpole symbols on the Jade Cauldron surface. His co-soul turned into a dim flame and slowly danced. A seal in his soul was triggered, and it gave him a familiar feeling. It was like when he met Hui and could use the co-soul to understand Hui's mysterious language. This time, his co-soul got a familiar feeling through the burning heaven flame. It seemed like he could recognize the consciousness of those archaic symbols. However, as he quieted down his mind to study carefully, he found that he still needed something to read them. Those tadpole symbols were swirling in his head. They were really familiar, but he couldn't read or understand them. Audrey had the same feeling, and it was even deeper than his. The wisps of her soul consciousness that fused with the Origin's heaven flames seeped into the tadpole symbols and tried to decode them. Audrey had fused with the heaven flames more deeply. Her compatibility level was almost as profound as Haig's, which was 1 level higher than Shiryan's. She was sensitive enough to know that those tadpole symbols were the written language of the most mysterious, archaic time. They were just like the Origin she had fused. She suddenly remembered what Tian Xie had said. The 4 ancient continents used to be Desolate's limbs. They had Desolate's life consciousness and its dependent soul. Also, Desolate was truly a creature from the absolute beginning. Her beautiful eyes brightened as she screamed. Those tadpole symbols should be the language of the absolute beginning era. I feel that they're so familiar. I believe that when I completely fuse with the heaven flames and become one with God Bless Mainland, I will be able to read and understand those characters. I can decode the 3-legged cauldron. I think so. Shiryen nodded and agreed with her presumption. He regarded her and then continued to burn the massive cauldron. He found that when the heaven flames covered the three-legged jade cauldron, those tadpole characters acted as if they were creatures with lives. They swam around the surface of the jade cauldron, which made them look exactly like little tadpoles. As they were moving around, they created so many different, mysterious, and complicated drawings on the surface of the cauldron. Each of those drawings hid the marvelous mysteries. For example, at this moment, they were creating a scene of lightning strikes and thunder rumbling that was destroying the whole world. The lightning bolts crushed so many asteroids around and gave people a strong impression. After a while, the characters changed again and created a harsh, icy world that was absolutely cold, lonely, and barren. Whenever the tadpole symbols created a new drawing, the cauldron released a corresponding aura. The cauldron had bolts of lightning shooting, and then it became very cold. The energy that the three-legged jade cauldron released was according to the drawings that the tadpole symbols had created. It was really magical indeed. However, when he and Audrey paused and subsided their heaven flames, the tadpole characters also subsided and then stopped moving. The drawings on the giant cauldron disappeared gradually. Sure, Yen understood everything quickly. He pondered for a while before retrieving all of his heaven flames. The heaven flames can't refine this thing. It isn't afraid of the sharp space sabers, so I think it won't be afraid of the heat of the heaven flames. You're correct. Those symbols should be the language of the absolute beginning era. Also, I think this giant, three-legged jade cauldron should be the weapon of the creatures in that era. Perhaps it has been here for billions of years. It's normal that we can't destroy it. He reluctantly gave it up. Seeing him let go of the heaven flames, Audrey hesitated for a while and then did the same. She thought for a while and then said, I sense the soul aura from those tadpole characters. They are the refined souls. I can feel that they are parts of some massive formations. If we can understand those characters, we can know the functions of this cauldron. Also, maybe we can tame and use it. Then, we have to wait until we can fuse with the heaven flames completely. Shi Yen smiled bitterly. Audrey said nothing. Completely fusing with the Origin's heaven flames was a long process. Sometimes, individual efforts weren't enough. They needed something special or some good encounters. Every time Shi Yen had fused his heaven flames, it wasn't because of his experience or accumulation. It was his special encounters when his mind suddenly opened to understand the marvel. It was unknown until they fused all the heaven flames. As they couldn't understand the characters on the cauldron, they were just wasting their efforts by burning it. This magical item from the absolute beginning era wasn't something they could decode, and taming it was just a dream. Forget it. I think this flow of asteroids should have a destination. Let's see where it is. As Shi Yen was begrudging, he felt content with this idea. Not long after Shi Yen and Audrey had retrieved their heaven flames, many meteoroids and asteroids around were attracted to the cauldron, sticking on its surface. Without grass growing, the massive cauldron became a simple asteroid. Compared to the other asteroids around, it wasn't eye-catching. The two of them were dejected. They then closed their eyes to cultivate on the three-legged jade cauldron. They were trying to fuse their heaven flames with the hope that they would be able to read the language of the absolute beginning era. Then they could have a chance to seize this cauldron. Unfortunately, the fusion of the heaven flames wasn't easy. Time flew hurriedly. After an unknown course, Xian opened his eyes. This time his eyes emitted a dazzling light. He jolted up and hissed. I felt the aura of something alive. The life magnetic field is really fierce. We're approaching it. Audrey woke up, her beautiful eyes twinkling. Ahead of us. Shi Yen nodded. Then he realized that the asteroid with the cauldron inside was flying much more quickly than the other rocks around. Thus, while they were cultivating, this asteroid had caught up with something ahead of them. The vigorous life, magnetic field he had sensed had come from an asteroid ahead of them. If they got rid of the lunar rock, they would have never met that one. However, their current asteroid was really fast. After flying for a long time, they were about to reach the others. Which realm does it have? Layers of light emerged on Audrey's body. She had discreetly urged her power. Now, she was ready to deal with any danger. Along the way, she had sat by Shurian, and they hadn't encountered many dangers. It was because of the three-legged cauldron they were riding. Inside this current of asteroids, terrifying dangers appeared everywhere. The rocks bumped into each other and exploded. The lightning and thunder struck everywhere. The sharp space sabers had never ceased their attacks. So many asteroids had been smashed into dust and scattered. However, the asteroid they were riding seemed to have the spirit that could proactively dodge those dangers. It had successfully avoided the extremely intimidating things that could make Audrey perish instantly. She understood that this three-legged jade cauldron had something magical. Even if it didn't have a tool spirit, it was a wonderful formation that could help it avoid the dangers in this area. Otherwise, she and Shurian wouldn't be able to stay here at ease. I'm not sure, but the life magnetic field is brimming. I think it won't be weaker than you and me. Shurian's face was grave as he hissed. Be careful. They found us. They've released their soul consciousness to check us out. A soul power field, like a tornado, appeared above their heads. That soul power field was extremely fierce and had seeped into every corner of this asteroid. This asteroid had a dark cave that led to the depth of the asteroid, which headed directly to the mouth of the cauldron. Shurian and Audrey knew this, but the one who had sent the soul consciousness to sense it didn't. The furious, tornado-like soul consciousness of that creature seeped into the entrance of the cave. Then, it disappeared like a rock thrown into the ocean. However, there was no echo. Then, many soul energy tornadoes that had streamed into the cave disappeared completely. Shurian and Audrey were sensitive enough to know that the three-legged cauldron inside the asteroid had just refined a powerful soul consciousness. They could feel the tadpole symbols begin to move again. I think that one got a big loss this time, Shurian grinned. Audrey also laughed. Well, I wonder how much soul power that one lost. He had bad luck. If his soul got damaged because of this, I'm afraid that he will consider us as the ringleaders. Be cautious. Shurian's face became stern. Chapter 1359, Heavenly Eye Clan. Chapter 1359, Heavenly Eye Clan Unisfer. In the shoreless, endless current of asteroids, three aliens that looked pretty similar to the human clan were riding a flaming asteroid. They were all lanky with curly brown hair. They didn't look very different from human beings aside from a vertical slit that was between their eyebrows. It looked like a vertical, closed eye. They had an extra eye compared to humans, and that closed eye gave people an odd feeling. The three of them included an old man with a dejected appearance. His eyes were wrinkled like chicken skin. He wore an ash-gray robe. Accompanying the old man was a middle-aged man with twinkling eyes. He held a dry wooden staff, and his face was gingerly. The last member of this group was a woman who looked to be in her 30s. She was wearing brocade clothes. Her face was picturesque, and her body was graceful. This group of three came from the same clan that had an extra eye. At this moment, the old man's vertical eye was twitching. The green veins on his forehead bulged and made his face sinister and fierce. The middle-aged man and the woman were cautiously looking at the old man. Shortly after, the old man shook hard. His vertical eye was still closed. 2 trickles of blood oozed out of the corners of his mouth. His blood was brown-gray. It wasn't red. Senior! Senior! The middle-aged man and the woman screamed in their alien language. They all grimaced. As they were screaming, they were about to use their power to help the old man recover. The eye on the old man's forehead shrank into a slit. His pair of eyes under that vertical eyes opened. With a pale face, he waved his hands to prevent the others from helping him. Don't waste your energy. My soul got hurt, not my body or God power. He stood up and turned around to see the area behind him. The middle-aged man and the woman followed him and waited for his explanation. The two aliens behind us don't have high realms. They're at just incipient God realm. However, the asteroid they're riding is really strange and unpredictable. Half of the soul energy tornado I'd released was swallowed. I couldn't feel the power of the asteroid yet. Perhaps their master is staying inside the asteroid. We should be careful. While he was cultivating, his third eye sent him some anxious feelings. He gathered his consciousness to sense and found Shiryan's and Audrey's life magnetic fields. Thus, he didn't hesitate to explore. He didn't expect that he wouldn't be able to retrieve half of the power he had released. Shortly after, his soul was damaged. He was startled indeed. "Senior, what should we do? Their asteroid is flying fast. Soon they will catch up with us. Should we find a place to avoid them?" The woman's eyebrows twitched. She hurried to suggest. She was a gingerly person. When they encountered unknown dangers, she proactively tried to dodge them. The sea domain of nihility was so immense. If they didn't try to find it, it was going to be tough to meet up with the other creatures. Nevertheless, the creatures that could operate in the sea domain of nihility were very bold. In this group of three, the woman had the lowest realm at third sky of incipient God realm. This time, she didn't dare to act rashly as she was accompanying her two brothers. "If we leave the flaming crystal cloud boat, it will be very dangerous. We'll have to face exploding asteroids, sharp space scythes, and bombarding lightning bolts. In your realm, you won't be able to resist for a long time. We can't take the risk." The old man shook his head. The flaming asteroid underneath them was also strange. The burning asteroid emitted fire clouds, circling the rock and sending sparks everywhere. Countless lethal space sabers, strong gusts of wind, and even the icicles couldn't attack them. They could only glide through them. They were safe along the way. They didn't need to worry about the deadly dangers in the sea domain of nihility. Thus, they had time to cultivate and sense Shiryan's and Audrey's life energy commotions. "What should we do now?" The woman sounded reluctant. "The asteroid they are riding is strange, but it's just my guess. Maybe they don't have any master accompanying them. If so, we don't need to worry at all." The old man pondered and then decided, "Wait until they come close. We can ask them to know who they are." "Yeah, under the given circumstances that we don't know things clearly, we shouldn't provoke them. But if there are only the two of them, harumph." His eyes suddenly became dark and sinister. A murderous aura emitted from him that was as thick as if it was a real matter and could destroy people's mind. His realm and cultivation base weren't low. However, when the massive three-legged cauldron had collected his soul power, it also hurt his soul. He was going to need a lot of time to recover. Deep in his heart, he hated Shiryan and Audrey already. If he didn't need to concern himself with the mysterious cauldron, he would have stormed over and crushed Shiryan and Audrey to vent out his anger. "We'll follow you, Senior," nodded the middle-aged man. The cold light radiated from his eyes as he looked pensive. On the surface of the asteroid with the big cauldron inside, Shiryan squinted and looked at the torrential asteroid current. "We will encounter them soon. There are three of them. Their soul magnetic fields are full and surging. I'm afraid that their realms aren't low, but I can't clearly tell their realms. When we see them, we will know. They're the first creatures we ever met in this area." Audrey arched her brows, feeling excited and looking hopeful. "But the one who got his soul hurt won't be friendly to us. Are you sure we can deal with them?" "If we're cautious, we'll be all right," said Shiryan. "I hope we can get some useful information from them. I wonder how long we've been trapped here. Perhaps our world out there has changed earth-shakingly." You can ask, has Hui destroyed our world yet? How about desolate? Has it awakened yet? Audrey mumbled. She had no measure to tell time, but she guessed that they had been trapped here for around 10 years. During this time, she couldn't contact Imperial Dark Tribe, and she couldn't use the power of the Origin to see the commotions on God-blessed mainland. She was really worried about the members of Imperial Dark Tribe, her planet, and her mother's safety. My co-soul is all right. It means that my Grace mainland is all right too. As your soul doesn't have any change, your ancestral planet is safe too. Don't worry too much, comforted Shiryen. Most of his friends and family members had been delivered to Grace mainland. As long as Grace mainland was okay, he didn't need to worry a lot. The fierce war between the God Clan and the Bloodthirsty Force had swept through many star areas. However, he didn't really care about them. When he delivered Xia Xanyen back to Grace mainland, he had discreetly advised her to call all the ones who had a good relationship with him to return to Grace mainland. After he had fused with the Genesis fruit, Grace mainland changed marvelously. It had a layer of immense energy hover above the surface of the planet. It protected Grace mainland every minute. He believed that unless Hui used its real power, but its clones couldn't destroy Grace mainland. No matter how strangely the world changed, as long as Grace mainland and his friends were safe, his beloved ones were safe and sound, he could ease his mind. Audrey calmed down as he had comforted her. She sighed, I hope so. The asteroid underneath them continued to accelerate. Suddenly, a dazzling flaming rock appeared in their vision. That flaming asteroid was so brilliant that it was eye-catching among countless ash-gray, brown, or black asteroids. So many flaming clouds covered the beautiful, slender, boat-like asteroid. The 3 aliens were standing on the back of the rock and looking at Shiryen and Audrey with bright eyes. Oh, hey, they have another eye between their eyebrows, screamed Audrey in fear. Shiryen was surprised. Looking at the 3 aliens, he lowered his voice. The old man and that middle-aged man are at first sky of a mortal realm. That woman is at third sky of incipient god realm. That old man is really formidable. He's about to enter second sky of a mortal realm. He's just 1 step away. Shiryen had contacted Caesar, Ling Xiang, Lorraine, Xian He, Frederick, De Carlos, and he had also witnessed how intimidating the God Lord and Ming Hao were. With his sharp senses, he could know the realms of the others exactly through the level of the blood qi, the tenacious body, and the life magnetic field. He could see even the smallest change of the soul clearly. As Audrey listened to Shiryen, she felt cold, so she proactively stayed close to him. Audrey had only first sky of incipient god realm. At this moment, her realm made her the bottom of the food chain in the sea domain of nihility. She was vulnerable here. The vertical slits in the labella of the 3 aliens riding on the flaming crystal cloud boat twitched. They gazed at Shiryen. Their ears quivered as if they were trying to identify his language and identity. After a while, the old man suddenly smiled warmly at him. He pitched his voice and used Shiryen and Audrey's language with the members of the Heavenly Eye clan. We're glad that we can meet up here. I would like to ask if your precursors or your seniors are here with you. Do we have the honor to meet them? Audrey was bewildered. You know our language. The old man chuckled and explained in a friendly manner. Well, of course. As we travel through the sea domain of nihility, we have to prepare well. We use a kind of soul memory seal to learn a couple hundred languages in many different star areas. Your language is rare, but not really difficult. Don't be amazed. If you want, you just need to imprint the soul memory seal in your head, and you can speak many languages of different star areas. His friendly attitude made him a modest precursor, guiding the juniors step by step. He didn't look dark and sinister as he used to. Shiryen wore a cold and faint face, but he was actually very cautious. He thought that this old man was very hypocritical. He knew that this old man was an evil character that he needed to carefully deal with. If this man came with rage, Yen could accept it. This fogey had been hurt by the massive three-legged cauldron anyway. However, at this moment, he looked so friendly as if nothing had happened. He made Yen uneasy immediately. Yen knew that he was a sort of tough and malicious person. He observed carefully and found that the other three were gazing at the asteroid that he and Audrey were riding. He understood it immediately. He knew why the old man had to act gingerly. The others weren't so sure about their competences. Chapter 1360. 3 Kinds of Living Beings. Chapter 1360. 3 Kinds of Living Beings. Updated by Novelful.com. The 3 members of the Heavenly Eye clan were looking at the asteroid Yen, and Audrey were riding with bright eyes. Also, the old man, their leader, had asked to greet their precursors inside the asteroid. Yen sneered inwardly. He understood that the others were nice and friendly to them, but not because they were polite and well-educated. It was because they couldn't guess how strong Yen and Audrey were. Throwing a glance to the asteroid underneath, Yen wore a respectful face, bowed slightly, and then lifted his head. He spoke arrogantly. "I'm sorry. Our master is cultivating inside. He can't come out to greet you. Please understand." "Ah, no worries, no worries." The old man's eyes sparkled as he studied Yen. Seeing Yen act arrogantly, he thought that Yen wasn't scared because he had a strong master. The old man was startled, so he became even more cautious. His smile became more tender as he said modestly, "Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Evelyn's. They are my brother and sister, Adams and Masha. We're going to the territory of the Dragon Lizard clan. I wonder if we're heading to the same place?" While he was introducing, the middle-aged man named Adams and his sister Masha smiled and nodded to greet Yen and Audrey. They were sneaking looks at the asteroid underneath Yen and Audrey as they were filled with fear. Remembering what Evelyn's had told them, they didn't dare to provoke Yen and Audrey, since they were really afraid of the rage of Yen and Audrey's master, who was cultivating inside the asteroid. The rapid steroid current rumbled all the time. While they were talking, Yen and Audrey's asteroid was moving faster, so they were approaching Evelyn's flaming crystal cloud boat. With this torrent, Yen and Audrey were going to pass the boat and leave Evelyn's and his group behind. While Yen was talking, Audrey kept a cold face. She just listened and didn't utter a word. She was clever enough to see what the 3 experts of the Heavenly Eye clan worried about. Thus, she acted even more arrogant and proud. It looked like she didn't even put them in her eye. The more arrogant and cold Audrey got, the more cautious Evelyn's became. He thought that the girl and Yen had a strong foundation to depend. Thus, he pondered if they should proactively make way for them. Evelyn's didn't even dare to tell the others that his soul got hurt because he was afraid of the disaster he could face later. Dragon Lizard clan. As Evelyn's was about to retreat and get further away from these 2, Yen suddenly smiled. "To be honest, our precursors are cultivating inside, and he has ordered us to drive. But Yen looked embarrassed and said, "This is the first time we've ever come here. We made a wrong turn, so we're lost now. Our precursors didn't know this yet. We're really upset. We don't know where we are now. Is the Dragon Lizard clan you've mentioned near here?" Audrey appraised Yen for his witty reaction. She cooperated by pulling a sad face. The cold visage disappeared. She sighed as if she was afraid that her precursors would punish them. The 3 members of the Heavenly Eye clan exchanged looks and smiled. Masha, the only woman in that group of 3, beamed at the others. "Yes, this area is the Dragon Lizard clan's territory. Precursor Dragon Lizard, the 2nd generation of the Dragon Lizard clan, is having a meal. The asteroid current over there is his food. While he's eating, he will take in the surrounding asteroids to increase his power. After that, Dragon Lizard will stay awake for a course of time. The members of the third generation of the Dragon Lizard clan will have a festival to celebrate the dragon lizard waking up. They will sell a lot of precious treasures. We're going there to see if we can find the cultivating materials we need. Listening to Masha, Shiryen, and Audrey were touched. They could never imagine that the second generation of the Dragon Lizard clan would consider the outer space rocks as food. What is that man? Is he an absolute beginning creature? Is that dragon lizard a creature from the absolute beginning era? Asked Audrey, her voice strange. Evelyn's looked at the strangely. He rubbed his chin, then asked, "You guys are from desolate territory." Desolate territory? Audrey was surprised. She felt as she was lost in the mist. She couldn't grasp Evelyn's idea. Evelyn's was more surprise. Your precursors didn't tell you anything about this place? You have no basic knowledge about the sea domain of nihility at all? Audrey didn't change her countenance. She still wore the cold face as she snorted. As soon as we got here, those fogies got inside the asteroid and cultivated. They said that when we got to the place, they would explain to us. They had only shown us the direction to go. Such a bunch of irresponsible old men. She stomped and cracked the rock surface. She looked so outraged. The 3 members of the Heavenly Eye clan changed their countenances. They were more fearful of the fogies Audrey had mentioned. It meant that there wasn't only one expert hiding inside the asteroid. Also, since Audrey didn't sound respectful when she talked about them, Audrey must be their favorite student. Oh, I see. Evelyn's was astounded. Seeing them approaching, he had an idea. He clasped his hand and said, "Oh, if you don't mind, I can explain something to you. It could save your precursors from this labor too." Audrey's heart beat frantically. Of course, she wanted it a lot. Still, while wearing a cold and faint visage, she nodded and said casually, "Then I have to thank you." "Don't be too polite." Evelyn smiled and then began explaining. Normally, there are 3 kinds of creatures living around the sea domain of nihility. The first kind is the ones like the Dragon Lizard clan, whose first-generation ancestor was the absolute beginning creature, called Lizard. The real absolute beginning creatures have a single-worded name, which is the language of the absolute beginning era. Lizard's second generation has a 2-word name, which is the Dragon Lizard. After the Dragon Lizard, it's the Dragon Lizard clan. They are the later generations of Lizard, the absolute beginning creature. This is the first kind of creature in the world. The second kind is the one like us, the members of the Heavenly Eye clan. Our ancestors weren't the absolute beginning creatures. They were high-level living beings created after the absolute beginning era. Of course, it's possible that our blood has the vestiges of absolute beginning creatures, more or less. But it's not really important. We're the new living beings of the new era. About the third kind, Evelyn's paused for a while and grinned oddly. It's you guys. You're the living beings that the absolute beginning creatures have created. They use the power of the absolute beginning creatures with the understanding of life to trigger the earth and heaven, and even destiny to create new lives. Because you were created by the absolute beginning creature, your soul is also born in the territory of that creature. You will be bound and limited to that creature, unless you destroy your creator or tame it. Your soul will always have an enslaving seal. Your creator can control you. So, among the 3 kinds of creatures, we are the ones that are discriminated as the weakest. Audrey said through her gritted teeth, "No, no, no, no." Evelyn shook his head and continued explaining. Your kind can still cultivate to an extremely profound level. You can evolve endlessly. There are some of you who can kill the creator or replace it. Of course, before you can do that, you are bound, but only your creator can bind you. No one else can have this ability, anyway. Pausing for a while, he added, "Actually, when the 3 kinds of creatures cultivate to a profound level, they aren't too different from each other in nature. There are so many peerless warriors among of your kind. They aren't weaker than the other creatures of the other two kinds. If you can kill your creator, you can replace it and become more intimidating. Listening to Evelyn's, Shiryen and Audrey exchanged looks and appeared pensive. After they met the members of the Heavenly Eye clan, they knew more about the settings of this immense universe. Staying inside Desolate's territory, they were like the frogs under the coconut shell. They had lived in a dry well without knowing how high the sky really was. But now they finally knew a bit more about its mysteries. How did you know we came from the Desolate territory? Is there anything to differentiate or divide the areas? Ask Shiryen. Evelyn's wasn't surprised because of their ignorance anymore. Your language exists in my memory's soul seal. It's the language in the Desolate territory, the territory of Desolate, an absolute beginning creature. Previously, there were some creatures from your area who came to the sea domain. Thus, your language was recorded and spread out. Pausing for a while, he continued, there are so many territories similar to Desolate territory outside the sea domain of Nihility. Also, there are real independent territories that were created at the beginning of the universe. The sea domain of Nihility has many entrances connected to outside territories. I've told you about the 3 kinds of creatures. Many of them live outside the sea domain of Nihility, but some of them still live in this sea domain of Nihility. For example, the Dragon Lizard clan lives right in the sea domain of Nihility. So the sea domain of Nihility is the center of those territories? The territories out there are independent worlds surrounding the sea domain of Nihility? Audrey was surprised. Evelyn's nodded. Yep, exactly. Your Desolate territory is the territory that Desolate, the absolute beginning creature, had created. It isn't different from the real territories. Even if Desolate vanishes, the territory will remain. Anyway, the territory of our Heavenly Eye clan wasn't created by an absolute beginning creature. It's the universe that has naturally developed for billions of years. Most of the territories out there formed naturally. The territories created by the absolute beginning creatures are very rare, and they are much safer. In fact, you guys are very lucky that you can reach such a realm. You guys are living and growing in a greenhouse. I know that many people living in our territory would envy you guys. Envy us. Audrey looked awkward. Of course, they envy you, Masha intervened, her eyes filled with sadness. Our family lives on a star in our territory. When I was born, there were hundreds of kids like me. But now, not even after 1,000 years, 2/3 of them are gone. Most of them were killed by natural dangers while cultivating outside. Like this sea domain with so many death traps. Shiryen was fearful. No, not this much. If they lived here, they would have all been killed. We wouldn't even have had 1/3 left. Although our area isn't as dangerous as this area, it isn't safe at all. The deadly storms and tornadoes could destroy even the souls. If we want to cultivate, we must take risks. Death happens regularly, said Masha. The areas outside this sea domain of Nihility are mostly like our Heavenly Eye clan's territory. Dangers lie everywhere. After experiencing so many challenges out there, when we reach a specific realm, we are qualified to enter and travel around this sea domain of Nihility, said Adams, the one who had kept silent all the time. Shiryen and Audrey silently listened to them. Until now, they had finally gotten clear information about the sea domain of Nihility. They finally knew how mysterious and deadly dangerous it was. Also, there were so many similar territories outside the sea domain of Nihility. This place was the center of so many territories, the most mysterious and attractive place to high realm warriors and high-level creatures. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.